All right, so just a bit of background on me, guys. Basically, I train my name's Adam Cant, and you probably got the invitation from Max or Maxine. And I find when a lot of people come online for the first time, I get called Max. So if you see it Maxine, I'm not actually a cross-dresser. My name's Adam, and I do predominantly training for builder registration in Geelong and in Ballarat, and I do actually do their online training for them as well. So this course, the online version, believe it or not, it's been going for 3 months because I started it a bit over 3 months ago because we had a break over the holidays, and we went through basically starting at Module 1 and then going all the way through to Module 12, and here we are again back at Module 1. So just like we have in the face-to-face class, we have some guys tonight that it's their first basically session ever. So, and then we'll have some guys who've done the course maybe once or twice already. So 1 second here, guys, I've just got a question. Yeah, so I've just got a question. So if I'm recording it, are you able to, will you guys be able to access this later? Yes, you definitely can. So that's the whole purpose of it too. So for guys who miss a session, then they can obviously re-watch it. And then all for you guys as well, if you're doing something and you think, geez, I'd like to go over that again, by all means, then the link will be there, and it'll be basically probably a 3-hour tutorial with me obviously talking about it and answering your questions. So normally what happens is we go through the content, and at any time you actually have a question, by all means ask it, and either ask me verbally or type it in the box. And then at the end of the session, when it finishes too, I just normally then basically open up the line and we talk about anything in general, because I know there's a lot of guys, and I know Subit's one who actually hasn't done face-to-face, and so he sort of doesn't have that sort of what we're looking for, sort of that connection where there's a group of guys who are in class sort of just, chatting about their experience and their mates who sat an interview and what they got asked. So sort of just general stuff about applications. Also about another subject, you might have been doing a bit of revision and go, hey, look, I didn't quite actually understand this bracing. Can you explain it to me? And so, yeah, at the end of the session, I always hang around and cover off any stuff like that as well. And also, too, throughout tonight and through the sessions, I also email over stuff as well. So you'll see stuff on my screen that we're using. I always say, hey, listen, does anyone actually need that? And if you do, then I email it over. So, yeah, it's been pretty successful, I think, because, yeah, I remember the first time we ran this session, I think we only had, I think it was me and one other guy, and, yeah, tonight we've got 10, and there's another 4 guys who I spoke to today who aren't here yet who said, hey, listen, I'll probably be online depending on what time I get back from work. So, yeah, by all means, hopefully you enjoy it. And what I'll do, I'll take you all off mute now so that if you've got any questions, we can talk about it. Now, I normally do ask too if this is someone's first session. Actually, is this anyone's first session ever? Has anyone actually not done anything with builder registration in a classroom environment? Because if you haven't, I'll talk through how the folder works and so on. But if there's no one who it's their actual first night ever, then I'll just get on to tonight's subject and talk through that. Sorry, and I've just got you off unmute as well, so if you are talking to me, basically I'll be able to hear you. Oh, sorry, I just heard a cat. No, so, okay, I might chuck that back on mute, seeing as there's a cat who seems to be listening listening into the webinar. So, now it looks like the cat's gone. So if the cat comes back, guys, I'll mute it, and you can just type me some questions. All right, so it doesn't look like it's anyone's first time ever. So what we're going to start with, guys, is I will teach this subject as if it is your first time ever, because I know it is some of the guys' first time. So what we're doing tonight is Module 1. So the way that I describe Module 1, and I do it a little bit differently to how you might have done it in a face-to-face session, I actually don't fill out the contract tonight. I sort of leave that for our next session, and we'll just be sort of going through and getting an understanding of all the different legislative books that we're going to be using throughout the course, then again in your multiple choice and then in your interview. So if you've, by all means, have a hard copy there beside you, or if you've got them, of your domestic building contracts regulations, basically the building regulations, the Building Act, the Domestic Contract Act, and then the OH&S regulations and the OH&S Act. So if you purchase them from us, they're the smaller books that are, got the holes in them that have been punched, they can put in a folder. So definitely have those available. And as we go through this, we'll talk about, when it's got a question here, basically find the answer, then why that is the answer. And if it's something that's basically that we're pretty sure we'll be asked in an interview or a multiple choice, I'll say, listen, why don't you chuck a tab on the side of your book? Why don't you call it this, or something that makes sense to you to find that reference, and let's highlight this section of it. So we will be doing that as well, so that when you guys are under pressure in your interview or in your multiple choice, that you can actually quickly find that. So I'm sure, by the end of the course, and the guys who are doing the multiple choice, by all means, they sort of, when they say the multiple choice, they're practicing the builder registration version of the multiple choice. That they sort of can know the answers off the top of their head anyway. But it's always there as a good backup to be able to find it. All right, so this will be heavily geared towards the contract side of our legislation. So I'll start off by just giving us a little bit of an understanding. Firstly, about the different acts and sort of the hierarchy, I suppose, and then we'll focus a bit more in on the contract. So in the beginning, in one of the first couple of pages of your folder, so you would have basically this legislation revision guide. So there is actually a hierarchy of control, meaning what actually is in charge of our legislation. So basically the first one, at the top of the tree, is our Building Act 1993. Then underneath that sits the regulations. Then under that is our NCC, so our National Construction Codes. Now you might actually have that referred to as the BCA, the Building Code of Australia. So the difference between the two is, if you've probably all got the book, the red one, the Building Code Volume 2. Basically that's for our Class 1 and Class 10 buildings, and our Volume 1 is for our commercial buildings Class 2 to 9. So that's BCA Volume 1 and Volume 2, and then Volume 3 is the plumbing one, which, me not being a plumber, don't have a lot to do with it. I don't even own a copy, to be honest with you. So if you hear me say BCA, or any chance to get this on soft copy, yeah, by all means, Alex. So I'll send this over in soft copy. What I'll do, guys, I'll send everything over in soft copy when we have a break, or when you guys are doing an activity, or at the end. So you guys have got soft copy of all this as well. So yeah, if you hear me talk back to this, if you hear me talk about the BCA, same thing as the NCC. And then underneath that, we then have the Australian standards. So the way that this is just the way that I remember it. Basically, I always think as the Act is more so the legislation, where it says, you must do this, and then the regulations then normally tell us a little bit how to do that. And so to put that into context, if we think about, I don't think I'm trying to examine off the top of my head, in the Building Act, if we were looking in there would be basically stuff in there about protection works notices, and that's obviously about giving notice to our neighbouring properties of the effect that it could have on their property, and that would actually be in our Building Act. But then if we went to the building regulations, for someone who is a surveyor, it actually outlines what is a Form 1 and a Form 2 and what needs to be incorporated in that. So it gives us a bit of guidance on how to do it. That's the way that I basically try and remember which one's which. So, and the way that I remember also what's in charge, because that might be a question you might get in your multiple choice, what is the hierarchy of control? I remember the acronym ARCS, so Act, Regs, Codes and Standards. So that's ARCS. So if you ever get that, that's the way that I've remembered it, one way to remember it. And then this is just a bit of a revision guide for use. What are the 4 R's in the building regulations? And I doubt this is going to be something that you're going to basically be asked in a multiple choice, but this is why the regulations was basically written, because we want to regulate our builders, our plumbers, our surveyors, and also regulate cooling towers. Now, I'll be brutally honest, as far as regulating cooling towers, not something I've ever been involved in constructing, but yeah, it is in there as well. So then what is our OH&S Act 2004 and our regulations? So basically, what's the purpose of having those? And so what they want to do is have obviously safety for everyone, eliminate the risk, encourage other people to be sort of take ownership of OH&S, and then also the public safety. So you've only got to think about what happened with that wall collapsing a couple of years with Grocon. We can see that if our OH&S isn't followed, then it does actually have an impact on the public as well. So if you guys have actually done any OH&S qualifications, you'll probably notice that Victoria work under the OH&S, whereas most of the rest of the country actually works under WHS. So all it is, WHS is work health and safety, and OH&S is occupational health and safety. And all that happened, I think it was in 2011, they basically just did an upgrade, and this is obviously the date of the latest issue. And I don't know if every state did, but most of the other states actually upgraded to a new version, which they have now called Work Health and Safety. So just don't be confused. Because we're in Victoria, we work off the OH&S. So if you bought your books through us, we would have sold you OH&S, we wouldn't have sold you WHS. But some guys get a bit confused because they've gone and done a Cert 4 in Work Health and Safety, and then all of a sudden they come and do this course and go, why am I doing OH&S, isn't it WHS? So no, Victoria, we're on Occupational Health and Safety. So then now here, what is basically the Contracts Act about? And we're going to do this in a lot more depth too, guys. This is just a revision guide that I say, to guys to chuck on their fridge or something where they're going to see it regularly. So basically the reason of having the Contract Act is we want to basically regulate the contracts. And when we say regulate it, we obviously things like deposit amounts, what our progress payments are going to be, when people can actually I suppose, withdraw from a contract and what is reasons for termination. So we want to regulate those. We also want to be able to resolve issues and then also regulate the homeowner's warranty insurance. So as we know, if you don't know, we'll talk about it now and in the coming weeks, how work that over $16,000 has to have homeowner's warranty insurance attached to it. And we'll go into that a lot more depth later on. I don't want to sort of steal thunder from another session. And also, we want to regulate contracts over 5,000 and the insurance over 16,000. So that's basically what our Contracts Act is all about. And then this one here, we'll do this in a couple of weeks as well. So this is basically about our building permits. So basically our Form 1 is the application for the building permit. The Form 2 is the permit itself. And this 3 and 4 is our protection works notice of what we do when we're actually giving notice to our neighbouring properties of, the tasks that are taking place and the effect it could have on their property. But we'll do those, I think that's module 4 from the top of my head. Then down here, we'll do a little bit on standards and tolerances. And you would have been given a soft copy in your, a hard copy in your folder, and it's towards the back. And basically what it is, it's used to resolve disputes. If anyone's been a site supervisor, and I'll pull this up a little bit later and have a look at it, it's quite often used when there is, I suppose a defect is when it normally comes out. And when we're going through at the end, we're doing our defect report for handover, and they'll come up, and I'm sure we've all seen it or heard of it, where the client's down on their hands and knees looking for little dints on the skirting board, or they've got their eye about 5 millimetre away from the bench top, and it's all about what is basically like a defect and what isn't. And it's basically the standards and tolerances that are acceptable within our industry, and then if it's not, then it's considered a defect. So it's giving that bit of knowledge to the client so they're not coming and picking every little fault that's with the house, because we're going to have tolerances within our building materials also. So these standards, we want to get to know these, and we will definitely through the course, basically those standards there. And then also be basically familiar with our trust components. So that's basically a bit of a guide for you guys to basically a bit of revision on your legislation. All right, so I'm just going to close that one down because on my screen, guys, I have all these lined up, and if I get too many tabs opened, it gets pretty hard for me to find what I'm looking for, which you'll notice later on when I open up all the acts and the regulations. All right, so I'll close that one down. There we go, I've closed the wrong one down. So this is another thing here, and we won't go into it tonight. This is a technical revision guide, and this is pretty much very standard questions across most licenses, especially like the DBM, DBU, and the carpentry. And then obviously if you're doing concreting, the stuff that then obviously relates to concreting. And it's just stuff here about, what is the brick overhang slab, the maximum on our edge rebates, and it basically gives you the reference there on where you find it. So this will be very common questions that you'll find within your license application when you do multiple choice, or even if you don't do multiple choice, when you go in and have an interview, you might be asked to find some of these things. All right, so this here is the document that I wanted to use to get started with tonight. So I'll just minimize this fractionally. So what this is about, guys, just to give you a little bit of an understanding about how contract law works. Now, you're not going to be quizzed on this, so when you go to the VBA, they're not going to say what is the intention to create a legal relationship. It's just to try and give you guys a little bit of an understanding about probably why we're using our Contract Act, and then also just about, you know, what makes a contract valid. And so we'll just go through these, and this is going to be when we come back to, I'll have to open it up. Give me 1 second because I closed down the wrong tab. All right. All right, so when we come back to here, this is actually going to be the answer for question 1. So with tonight, guys, I'm not overly concerned with actually writing these questions in here. If you want to, by all means. And then if I'm going to quick say, hey, Adam, can you slow down? I want to write that. But I find when I've trained this in the past, guys get a lot more out of it if they sort of just highlight in the tab the parts that they want. And then if they want to sort of maybe write this down, maybe just put a reference to where the answer actually comes from. So, yeah, I just think it's a bit of wasted time by, you know, writing down, you know, because it takes us 5 minutes sometimes to write some of these answers. So I just find, yeah, let's tab it and mark it, and then probably just put the reference there. And you will notice that actually in your handout as well, in your folder, that you're given the answers for these at the back as well. So the first question really relates to this. Oh, I close that down now. I've got the right tab to this part here. So we want to know when it comes to a contract, what does it mean? Well, when we actually have a contract, there's got to be an intention there to create legal relationships. So what that basically means for a contract to exist, it's the first line here, the parties to an agreement must intend to create the legal relationships. So it can't be something that's accidentally done, or I just go and do it and they don't agree to it. Basically, the parties must have an agreement to basically create that legal relationship. And this is the main part we're probably concerned about, is the onus is on the party seeking to prove the contract to demonstrate intention and the nature of the relationship between the parties. So what that basically is saying is, us as the builder, if we want to get paid, we need to actually show, what's up to us to show, hey, this was actually an agreement, and therefore you need to pay me for this is what I've done. And that's why you'll hear me talk lots about get everything in writing. Now, I know that we're not going to go and build a house for someone on a handshake, but little things like just variations. You know, we want it all in writing because, and even with, you know, I got caught out a little while ago with some training that I did where I was just sort of a verbal agreement. I did the training, and basically then when it came time to be paid, it was like, oh, no, we're not paying you that. We're paying you this because you did such and such. And that was one thing too where the onus was on me because I wanted to be paid for the training that I was done. And basically it was a misunderstanding between me and the training provider. And that's what's going to happen sometimes when it does happen. I'm sure we've all seen it on site. So that's why smaller things, even with your subbies, you might want to have in writing, you know, what their duties are and what you're paying for that. And especially variation. Variations is a big one where, you know, we sort of have that relationship with our client, and if we're doing a renovation for them, you know, we could be there for 6 months and they might just say, oh, listen, you know, I didn't really like this. Can you change this over for me? Yeah, mate, no worries at all. We can do that for $500. And then for some reason it blows out or whatever, or even it might be hard to get the $500 back. So the onus is always on the party basically, which is normally us, to approve that it actually existed. So just keep that in mind. We're the ones normally chasing our money, not the other way around. So then the other part that makes basically part of our contract law is this part here, which is the agreement. So the first requirement for a valid contract is an agreement, which normally consists of an offer and an acceptance. So then, and you'll see some of this is in legal terminology, and it says consideration. So most of us probably think, yeah, okay, well, they're considering if they want to go ahead with the contract. Well, no, it's not. The consideration is the price that is asked by the promiser in exchange for the promise. So basically the price for the promise. So basically saying, I will build that deck for you for this much money. So that's basically me promising I'm going to build the deck, and this is what it's going to cost, and that's actually the consideration. So then this is another one too. Probably not something that we would relate to much, but it does happen. So if you read the first sort of 3 or 4 lines, for a contract to exist, the parties must have contractual capacity, and there are certain persons and classes of persons that lack the capacity to enter into a contract, with the consequence normally that results in the contracts will not be enforceable against them. So that could be, you know, this wouldn't happen, but basically pretend, you know, there's some sort of homeless guy who goes, oh mate, can you build me a new shelter? And you go and build it for him and then say, okay, here's my 20 grand. Oh mate, I can't pay that. Then that would be someone who didn't have the capacity to actually go into the contract. And it could also be someone could be a minor. Basically they might be 16 and can't sign a contract. It could also be someone who's not mentally stable and things like that. So there's got to be basically capacity for both parties to actually enter into that contract as well. All right, so then on the next one here, the consent. So entering into a contract must involve the elements of free will and proper understanding of what each of the parties is doing. So obviously we can't actually use it as bribery and say, hey, listen, mate, if you don't let me build your house, then I'm not going to give you any more work as a Sparky. It can't be, it's got to be a free will. Basically, if it's not, then that contract can be proven that it's basically wasn't a free will, and then basically can be voided. So this one here, and we'll cover this a little bit later tonight. So then the legality, basically some contracts, although possessing all the formal requirements of a valid contract, will be void because the object of the contract is one which is not allowed or discouraged by law. So the way that I explain that to guys is by using, say, a cost plus contract. And we'll talk about that later on tonight. There's only certain circumstances when you can actually use a cost plus contract. So if we were basically seen to be using a cost plus contract when it wasn't allowed because we thought, oh yeah, it's safe for me, I'm not going to lose any money, I'll do it on a percentage or so on, and basically the Contract Act and the regs didn't allow that, then that would basically wouldn't be a valid contract. So that's what that's getting at there. And a friend of a friend basically was telling me he had a plumbing mate in New South Wales, and he was actually doing work and signing contracts on it, but he wasn't actually a registered building practitioner or however they do it in New South Wales, so therefore he actually wasn't legally allowed to be signing contracts. So when there was actually a dispute on the contract, it was worth about 20 grand, the client went to their solicitor and they realised that this guy wasn't even registered, so he didn't even have the authority to sign a contract, and was basically, he basically did his dough because he couldn't go and enforce the contract at VCAT or through the courts because he had illegally signed a contract. So there's things like that as well which relate back to that one there. So as I said, hopefully I've given you a little bit of an understanding of what that sheet was about. So you have a read through it, but by all means, no one's going to, in your interview, say to you, what is consideration, what is capacity to pay the contract. It's just giving you a bit of an understanding about how our regs and our Act work in relation to our contracts. So that there is the answer for question 1. So I said it's up to you if you want to put a few dot points down, but personally I wouldn't worry about it. And if you do want to do it, just say maybe that from the handout called Australian Contract Law. All right, so the next one here basically list the 4 hierarchy of control documents. So unfortunately I have basically closed that down, but if you want to write this in, it's actually on that revision guide that I showed earlier on. So remember, it was our ARCS acronym, so our Building Act, our regulations, our codes, and then our standards. So that's basically what the hierarchy of control documents are. So that one there, you're not going to basically reference from any of our books because it comes across the 4 books. So by all means, if you want to write that down, by all means, just write that acronym ARCS, and that stands for Build or Act, as in Building Act, regulation, our basically our codes, as in our construction codes, and then our standards. All right. So when we scroll down to this next question, and now this here says list 6 objectives of the Building Act. So what I'd like to do, guys, if everyone just pulls out their Building Act, and we'll use probably that you'll find these next, probably first 10 or so questions. I'll basically step you through how we do it, and then as we start to get a bit of more knowledge with these books, I'll then let you guys do it, and then you can type the answer in the box, and then basically we'll go over to make sure we've got the right answer. So it won't all be for the next 2.5 hours of me, basically just telling you the answers. And we do normally have a break, guys, sort of around 7:15, 7:30. So by all means, by that stage we'll go and have a drink. My voice is normally hoarse by then, and have a little bite to eat if you like. So yeah, so what are 6 objectives of the Building Act? So if we open up the Building Act, And does anyone actually not have a copy of the Building Act? Because I can email one over to anyone who hasn't got one. So I think everyone must have one. Yep, cool. So if we go to page 1, I want to say page 1, this is in Roman numerals. It's basically about the 3rd page in. So you'll find that every act or code that we've got actually has a table of provisions, which is really a table of contents. And so you'll see that sometimes it'll have a purpose, sometimes it'll have an act, sometimes it'll have both. So on this one here, it actually are 6 objectives of the Building Act. So if we're onto that page 1, or the I in Roman numerals, if we look down in that first part 1, we'll see the objectives of the Act, which is on page 14. So if we then scroll to page 14, oh, you need one? Cool, no worries at all. Bear with me 1 second and I'll send one over. So would you mind just putting your, I'm pretty sure I've got your email, but could you just maybe put your email address in the box, and then I can cut and paste it out of there, and you can send it to me if you don't want everyone to see it. And yeah, basically I can basically cut it out of there and then send it straight over. Yep, cool. All right, so I'll just explain this one, guys, and then I'll email it over. So actually I'll do it now, so then these guys can actually participate with it. So bear with me 1 second, and I'll just send this over. Yeah, so while I'm doing this, if you guys maybe want to find what they are on page 14. What I've actually done, I've sent you basically the whole lot over for tonight. So save me doing it again. So you'll probably get about 6 books in there. So give me 1 second. I've just got to grab this other email address. All right, cool. So those guys should have those books. So yes, if we go to page 14, and yeah, this isn't anything that you're going to need to remember off the top of your head, because you'll always be able to reference it, but just getting used to using these books. So when we go to page 14, and it just basically says the objectives of the Act. So the objectives of the Act is to protect the safety and health of people who use buildings and places of public entertainment, to enhance the amenity of buildings, to promote plumbing practices which protect the safety and health of people, to facilitate the adoption and efficient application of national building standards and national plumbing standards, and to facilitate the cost-effective construction and maintenance of buildings, and so on. So that was really just a little exercise to basically get used to these books, and also it gives you a bit of an understanding of why we actually use basically the Building Act. So certainly again, I wouldn't bother writing all those down, because we'll be here all night, but if you want to reference it, basically page 14 of the Building Act 1993. And so just for those guys who I emailed over to, you might find that the page numbers might differ slightly from what is actually what I'm talking about in hard copy to the soft copy. So there might be 1 or 2 pages out, but I'm sure we'll find it. All right, so here's the next one then. So what are the purpose of the building regulations? So we've looked at our acts, and now if we pull out the building regulations, so this will be the building regulations 2006. Same thing again, if we go to sort of the 3rd or 4th page in, and it's labelled with the number I in Roman numerals, basically the table of provisions, or I have the habit of calling it the table of contents, and we'll see in there basically this one, the question says what are the purpose of the building regulations, and you'll see there actually doesn't give us a purpose, but it's got the objectives. So let's just have a look at what the objectives are. So they're basically on page 1, and that's not in Roman numerals. Let me go over, and it just talks about why these are here. So the objectives are to remake with amendments the regulations which control the design and construction. Okay, it might take a little while for that email to come through, guys, just because it's pretty big. It's got about 6 documents on it, but it did get sent from my end, and it didn't actually bounce back. So yeah, it should basically come through any minute now, hopefully. All right, so then the second one, to prescribe standards for the construction and demolition of buildings, prescribe the standards for safety for places of public entertainment, to regulate matters relating to the use and maintenance of buildings and places of public entertainment, and to prescribe requirements for the design and siting of single dwellings and associated buildings. So there's more there, we can keep going on, but there's no need to read through them all. It's all just a little exercise of, okay, this is the building regulations, and this is either the purpose or the objective of why we have it. So we'll move on to the next one. So I said if you want to reference that, I would just, page 1 of the Building Regs 2006. All right, so then it says here, explain the National Construction Code / Building Code of Australia, basically what it's about and how it impacts on building in Australia. So what I'm going to do, guys, just bear with me a second, I'll pull this up, and I'm going to actually basically show you where that is on the actual building code. It might be something you get in a multiple choice, and just so how you can find it. So normally when you pull open your building code, you guys have probably got a building code. If you want a soft copy, by all means I can try and email it over later. Quite often it's too large to go in email, but it is actually free online at basically the website's ABCD, Australian Building Codes Board, ABCB, Australian Building Codes Board. You basically just register, and then you get basically you get it for free as a PDF. And you can see I've got it up here now. The beauty of it too, when it comes as a PDF, it's like a working PDF where you can actually click on stuff and then it takes you to that page. So that's the beauty of it. But anyway, back to this question. Basically what it is and basically how it impacts on our building. So if we come to in here, and it talks about down the bottom what the goal of the building code is. So basically the goal of the NCC, National Construction Codes, is to enable the achievement of nationally consistent minimum necessary standards or relevant safety, including structural safety and safety from fire, the health, amenity and sustainability objectives efficiently. And it's applied so that there's rigorously tested, and so it reads a lot more about there. But the main thing we want to get out of that, guys, is this part here. It's only the minimum. So that's the biggest thing I find when guys come to class for the first time and we're doing some stuff, say on like concreting is a prime example, and the first time they get to the concreting module, like the slabs and footings, and they're all gun-ho where they're going through the questions and they don't reference any of their answers, they just use their own knowledge, and it might say, what is the minimum MPa of concrete? And because all they've ever used is 25 MPa, they straight away write there that 25 MPa is the minimum, and it's actually not. So if you guys who have done the course before, you would know this, but I'll show you for the guys who are doing it for the first time, and we'll cover this when we actually do our slab and footing module. So where am I looking here for footings and slabs? Hopefully in here somewhere. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'll just make that a little bit bigger. So I'm probably wasting too much time on here. But basically it talks about saying that the minimum MPa is 20, and then it also talks about, here we go, that's what I'm after here. So concrete must comply with the following. Obviously our Australian standards 3600, have a strength at 28 days of not less than 20 MPa, have a 20 millimetre nominal aggregate size, and have a nominal slump of 100 millimetres. So that's the thing where I find a lot of guys on site use 25 MPa and they basically use 80 mil slump, and that's all they've ever used, and that's what they see is specified on the plans. So they think that is what the minimum is. So that's why you want to be careful when we're doing our assessments. Don't just sort of use your own knowledge. Have a quick look at your standards and your codes and just make sure that it's right before you commit to that answer. So that's what I was getting at with basically when it's saying in what is the goal, to give us minimum standards. So that's what it talks, minimum necessary standards, and that's why quite often we then design above that minimum. All right, so that's what that one there is. So if you guys want to reference that, you can just basically say, page 9 of BCA Volume 2, the goal. All right, so the next question we've got there basically is up to number 6. So what is the main purpose of the Domestic Building Contract Act 1995? So let's basically pull open our Contract Act and let's see if we can find that page. As a start, go to that page 1 in Roman numerals and the table of provisions, and it'll probably basically give us a bit of direction from there. So the purpose then is on page 1, and if we've all got it there we can probably see it, and it says the main purpose of the Act is to regulate contracts for the carrying out of domestic building work, to provide the resolution of domestic building disputes and other matters by the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, so that's VCAT. The required builders carrying out domestic building work to be covered by insurance, and then to also amend the House Contracts Guarantee of 1987 Act. So that's basically the purpose of it. Same thing again, it's nothing that I dare say you're going to be asked in the interview, but it's just a bit of exercises around why these books were brought into play. Not these books, why this legislation was brought into play, and why we sort of need to be a little bit aware of it's more so to know which book to go to when we're being asked questions on our multiple choice. Not only in your multiple choice, once you guys go on and get licensed, by all means, once you get licensed, then if you've got a bit of a question, you can go and look at this stuff as well. And just a bit more of an update too. I think I told the guys last week, we got 24 guys for the month of I shouldn't say we got, 24 of our clients who did our course got registered in February, and then another 7 actually last week. So I always say to the guys, that gives you great confidence in if you're doing this course and understanding it, and that the results are there and guys are getting licensed. So in total, as of late last week, our list was at 397 guys and girls who had actually got their license. So by all means, it's great confidence for you guys. I know you're going to be nervous as anything when you go in, but obviously with those numbers, what we're teaching is current, and if you guys are understanding it, then there's no reason why you really shouldn't be getting through. So this one here, so what is the purpose of the domestic building contracts and tribunal regulations? So basically commonly referred to as our contract regulations. So if you've got it in hard copy, guys, it's the really little white one. So same thing, and let's see basically what the purpose of this one is. And let's have a look. So when we have a look at it, you can see it actually doesn't have a purpose, so that's obviously a typo in our material there, so we'll go with what the objective is. So same thing again, our table of provisions on the Roman numerals, page number 1, and then on page number 1 it actually tells us. So the objectives of the regulations are to prescribe certain work as building work to which the Act does not apply, to allow certain contracts to be cost plus. So there's one straight away, guys. So this is going to describe to us you actually can use this contract for a cost plus scenario. You can use this cost plus contract for this scenario. So we know straight away if we're going to go cost plus, it's probably going to be in here. And then obviously there's a few other basically points there of what the objectives are. So by all means, if you want to reference it, page 1 of the domestic building contract regulations. All right, so then explain the purpose of the Building and Construction Industry Security Payment Act 2002. So if you've got it in hard copy, guys, let's pull it out and have a little bit of a look. And whilst we're having a look at it, I'll explain sort of how this works. It might be something that you guys can use to your advantage at the moment, because I presume we're probably at this stage, if we're not licensed, subcontracting and sending out invoices. So basically it's on question 1.8. So the purpose, if we do the same thing again, look inside, open up the first page, and there's going to be our table of provisions, and basically the purpose, and this one says purpose, so we'll go with it, not the objective, is on page 1. So we'll flick it over, and it says the main purpose of this Act is to provide entitlements for progress payments for persons who carry out construction work or who supply related goods and services under construction contracts. So if you want, guys, I would probably even tab and highlight that one, because some guys have actually been getting asked that in their interview, and what is basically the reason for the purpose of the Building and Security Payment Act. And so some guys know off the top of their head it's basically about recovering their money, so that we've got a lot of, I'm sure we've all been caught out with builders who say, hey mate, I'm actually sorry, I haven't got my progress payment, so I can't pay you till I've been paid. And it's like, well, no, sorry, mate, my contract's with you, not with the owner. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in this module, about where to find that that information in this legislative book, and then how we sort of then put that into practice to make sure that we're getting paid on time. All right, so that yeah, so the purpose is on page 1. If you want to basically note that on this part here of your hard copy, if you haven't done it already. And so this is here what I was sort of just talking to about there. So referring to, is it possible to have that on screen? Yeah, I can put that one on screen now, so give me a second. The only reason I haven't got all these on screen, guys, is just because we're using so many. It's very confusing for you guys and me because I've got to have about 8 screens open. But what I'll do, because from here on in, we'll probably focus on one book and then go to the next. So I've just got a request to put that up on screen. So give me a second and I'll put it up. All right, bear with me 1 second. All right, so this is the Security of Payment Act. Now this is just basically most of these are free online, so you might find that some of the pages, as I said before, might be slightly different to the printed version, as in the content will be the same, but just the page number. So by all means, yeah, if we're finding something, yeah, you go, geez, that's on page 16 in mine, why is it on 14? Don't stress, just a different version or a different print. All right, so we'll move on to this one here, and I'll go through the screen how we actually find this next answer. So the next one here says referring to the Building Construction Security of Payment Act. So this one here, hopefully you guys have all got it in your hard copy. If you haven't got it in hard copy, pull that up on the screen if I've emailed it over to you. It says explain how payment claim needs to be made and the steps to recovery of a debt from a principal contractor. So I'll step you through this first one, and then probably in the next sort of 3 or so questions, you guys will start to do this on your own. So I'll just show you through now that basically this is our table of provisions. So if you're not sure where to find something, as I said, we'll always be tabbing and highlighting stuff anyway, but guaranteed there'll be something you'll be asked basically within your multiple choice or your interview that you might not actually know. And so you want to know how to find it rather than me or your normal trainer saying, tab this and highlight it. So the first step we go to, guys, is actually our table of provisions. So we're going to come down here. And so our question was basically explain how a payment claim needs to be made, and then, so it's almost 2 questions in one, the steps to the recovery of that. So if we come back here and we'll look, okay, how do I actually have to basically put my invoice, or what do I need to do to actually be able to claim that payment from the principal contractor who's normally the builder. So we'll come down here. And so it talks about basically rights to progress payments. You think, oh, it might be in there. But then you come down here, procedure for recovering progress payments. So that's pretty much what we're after. It says, you know, explain how the payment needs to be made. And we're going to come down here. And also it talks, payment claims. So if we come up here and we have a bit of a go through here, and I've just funny because I've made notes basically out of my book and they don't correlate with what's on here, so I might have to fluff around between my 2 books, the hard copy in front of me and then the one on the screen. So why don't you guys see if you can find that, and give a minute, and then I'll basically bring it up on the screen. So we're trying to figure out basically how a payment claim needs to be made. We'll do that, and then we'll talk about how the recovery of it is after that. All right, so if you guys are having a little bit of a look, I said just ignore the page numbers if you got it in hard copy, because these parts will always be the same. So it's basically under this part here, payment claims. So basically Division 1, Section 14. So I'm going to scroll down to that. Not too far, no. All right, so here I'll just make this a little bit smaller. So on my hard copy, guys, this is actually on page 24, but as you can see on the PDF, it's on page 17. So basically, it just says here that with a payment claim, that as far as a payment claim goes, but the payment claim is going to be our invoice, so it's got to identify the construction work or the related goods and service to which the progress payment is being made. So basically outlining what we've done, and that's why you'll see, guys, it might be a little bit different to what you've got in your book, because my book, yeah, basically you'll understand it anyway. So it's pretty much the same sort of thing. And then it says must contain basically the prescribed information, and it's got to, I'm reading out of my book, guys, now, not on the screen, because I presume everyone's got the same book. So point C says must identify the construction work and must then indicate the amount of the progress payment. So the main part also, not the main part, one of the other parts too, guys, and this will be whether you're looking at it in soft copy or hard copy, is must state that this is made under the Act. So what we want to be doing with our invoicing is basically saying, you know, this payment is made under the Building Construction Industry Security of Payment Act 2002. So what that's actually then doing is, one of the reasons this was set up was to actually make it easier for basically contractors to recover their money, rather than, because a lot of people go, well, hang on, only $1,000, you know, I'm not going to go to court for that. So this basically, by using this act and basically outlining that this work was done under this act and we're basically invoicing under it, gives us an easier resolution to that. So basically that's what needs to be basically on our claim. So I said that if you've got the newer version, you'll notice that there's actually point A, B, C, D and E, and on this one here we've obviously only got A, B, C. So, but same thing, whichever one you're working with, yeah, basically look under the payment section and you'll find it. So then the second part of the question we were doing was then the steps of the recovery of a debt from the principal contractor. So if we go back to this part here and we go back to our table of contents, then there'll be a section in there that'll talk about the recovery. So if we come down here, so you just want to get used, sorry I've gone too far, you just want to get used to actually using this table of provisions. So we come down here, and there'll be somewhere here where it talks about, there we go, the recovery from the principal. So that there in these parts here would actually start to talk to us about how we recover that from our principal contractor. So we'll have a look at it, and you guys can then basically, if you haven't already, put these, where these answers came from, into your answer sheet there. So I've got it in hard copy, guys, as being on page 58. So if you're looking for it in your hard copy, but the same, it'll be the same section in here. Section number two, procedure for obtaining our payment. So okay, what do? We've put our actual invoice in, it hasn't been paid, what's the next step from there? So if we go to there, on this one here, it's page 34, and I'm looking for section 32, so I'll come down. So I said in your hard copy it'll be page 58, but still section 32. And this here basically outlines the following procedure must be followed to obtain payment of the money owed. And so firstly, a debt certificate must have been issued. Secondly, the claimant must serve a notice on the claim of the principal, and then a notice of claim is a notice of claim is a notice in the prescribed form together with a copy of the debt certificate. So that sort of just talks about, you know, what you've got to do, and then how, you know, the certification of debt by the court and so on. Don't worry, it's nothing that you know, I doubt you're going to be asked in your interview, okay, someone hasn't paid you, what are the steps you go through to get that? But if you had to reference it, basically I would just have these, because this is sort of the main part that we're dealing with our pardon me, our Industry Security Payment Act, is basically the procedures for payment and then the procedure for obtaining the payment. So if you wanted to tab it, I'd probably just highlight basically that part on the claim and then the part on page 54, and just chuck a little tab there that one says claims process and the other one the recovery process. So other than that, you know, there's not too much that we normally get asked basically outside of that in our multiple choice or in an interview, and you just want to have that easy reference if you can't remember basically what it's used for. But I've found that when guys start doing the course, they start actually putting that on their invoice, and they sort of have a bit of an understanding of it just from basically writing it on their invoice and knowing, well, this is why I'm using the Building Construction Industry Security Payment Act to basically recover my money. So they can then normally talk about that in an interview if they need to. All right, so we'll come back to here, and so the next question we're going to be on to is question number 10, and it says explain how the guide to standards and tolerances in 2015 came into operation, who the parties involved are, and how it can be used to resolve disputes between builders and owners. Now, you've all got a copy basically in your folder. I don't know if I've actually got a soft copy of that one, guys, so just give me a second and I'll have a look. I don't think I do. No, I don't have a copy of the standards and tolerances guide in soft copy. So, but basically, as I spoke to you before, what it was about was sort of trying to, what it talks about there is resolving the dispute. So it's about giving guidelines, because that's why it's called the Guide to Standards and Tolerances, is what are actually the guidelines to how something has to be built, you know, finishing, you know, also just a general construction of the of our building projects. And you'll see there that too, you know, if you've actually read through it, it talks about, you know, cracking in slabs, and it'll say, you know, if it's I don't know if anyone's ever done any polished concrete, but if you have, as we all know, it cracks, and then owners go, well, there's a crack in my concrete, and unfortunately that's what concrete does. And I know my garage, it was only just a couple of months old and it started to crack, but it'll say in there, you know, these are surface cracks, it won't have any structural basically effect on the building, and it outlines in the standards and tolerances guide, you know, basically if the cracks, you know, a certain width wide, then pretty much you don't have to worry about it. If it gets to a certain size, then monitor it, and then once it gets to a certain size again, well, then it needs to be rectified. So that's what our standards and tolerance is all about, giving guidelines to our building owners, and also we can even to us as tradesmen to basically know, you know, what we've got to work to. And you might find sometimes too that it might even be specified that you've got to work above that. So I do know if you've got any plasterers here or anyone who does commercial plastering work, you might have to do like a level 5 finish. And if you then read what a level 5 finish is, it'll talk about if you put a straight edge, and don't quote me on these numbers, but basically a straight edge horizontally across your studs, then over a length of something like 1.8 meters, there shouldn't be deviation of more than 2 millimeters or something like that. So that'll be something that's basically above and beyond what our normal standards are. But that's because we're trying to achieve basically a level 5. And I'm pretty sure it's level 5. I'm not a plasterer, but you guys will correct me if I'm wrong. And that's basically where they'll go and basically top coat the whole wall. And you might see that in a commercial building of some sort. So that's you know, another reason too why we read our specifications and know what our standards and tolerances are. So then when it comes, you know, dealing with our client, they've sort of got a little bit of knowledge about what's expected. All right. So it says here, referring to basically our standards and tolerances guide, lists 6 Australian standards. So don't worry about going to your standards and tolerances guide, guys, because you're going to have a whole heap of books when you go for your interview anyway, and you're probably going to have about 8 Australian standards there which you can actually access. But if for some reason you did actually have to access them, I'll show you the easiest way to do it, because you're going to have your building code with you, and the standards and tolerances guide is a bit dicky to actually find the Australian standards in. So if you're ever wondering you have to find standards, one, we always probably Google, it's the quickest way, but if you're in an interview scenario you can't Google. Basically what you can actually do is in your building code here, and in the general requirements, basically part 4, documents adopted by reference. This is basically the documents that the BCA will reference. So because the BCA is, you know, only, I don't know, 50 mil thick, basically they're going to reference us to our Australian standards. So when we come on here, it says here documents adopted by reference. This is part 1.4, and you can see here, I'll make this just fractionally bigger. It shows you here basically what the Australian standard number is, when it was issued, and actually what it's called. So as you come down, we'll probably see some that we use a bit more regularly. So there you go, glass. Australian standard 1288 is glass in buildings, and it covers the selection and the installation. So in the latest issue was 2006. So these all go basically in order from the number being the lowest to the highest. And so yeah, if you had to find a standard in here, then if someone, you know, if you were in your multiple choice and it says what is an Australian standard 3600, you'd come to, if you didn't know it, you come to this part here in your building code, scroll down, and I should have chosen something that wasn't 3600 because it's so far away. There we go. concrete structures. So there we go. So that's how you can actually then find what your Australian standards are. So 3700 masonry standards, and then it also tells you the year which it was actually basically last updated. So with that last question there, when it says referencing to the standards and tolerances guide, list basically 6 Australian standards, I just think it's easier to find them out of there because you're going to have your building code pretty much no matter where you go, whereas a standards and tolerances guide maybe not so much. All right, so 1 second. All right, so our next question, guys. So question 12. Now this is going to be something that I'll let you guys do on your own. So we'll read through it and then I'll show you how we find it. Now, if you guys have done the course before, you'll know it. But anyway, it doesn't hurt to try and re-find it if you haven't got a tab on it. So comment on the truth or otherwise of the following statement. So the builder is not obliged to perform a variation, but may agree to do so if the variation is requested in writing by the owner and will not add more than 4% to the original contract price. So let's see if we can find that. Now, just to put you in the right direction, because we're using these books and we're using our legislation, basically you've got all these books in front of you and it says contract. So it's not going to be in the Building Act. It's not going to actually be in our building regulations or our OH&S. So because it says contract, we want to be looking in either our Contract Act or our contract regulations. So I always go to the Contract Act first just because it's a lot thicker, there's a lot more contained in it, and then basically just go through those table of provisions and you'll probably find something from memory, I haven't got it in front of me, probably to do with variations. So have a go through there and then hopefully you can then find that page. So once you've found it, maybe put in there whether it's true or it's false, and basically then why it is that. And if it is false, basically what is the percentage. So I'll leave you guys with that one and then I'll bring it up on the screen and we'll go through it. So Domestic Building Contract Act, and look for your variations. Cool, thanks Subit, well done mate. So I'd actually highlight and tab that one. And I'm just having a look guys, I don't know it's actually in this one here that I've got on the screen. So for the guys who I emailed it over to, yeah, this is obviously an older one that basically needs to be updated. So if you can't find it on there, because I just had a bit of a look and it's in a different part I think. So bear with me a second, I'll see if I can find it on there because it's yeah, definitely different to the hard copy that the guys have got. And there you go, guys, it is there. Basically, it's on the same page. So if you haven't found it, let's just go through it. So what we should have found, guys, I'll just bring up the question box so you guys can talk to me. Yep, cool. Ben's got it on page 34. Yeah, so I just wasn't sure, guys. I've got it tabbed in my book. I just wasn't sure because these are different with the soft copies. So basically on page 34, you can see there that it talks about variations of plans or specifications by the building owner. So it talks about, I'll just make that fractionally bigger. So if the builder reasonably believes that the variation will not require a variation to any permit and will not cause any delay and will not add more than 2% to the original contract price stated in the contract, the builder may carry out the variation. So basically when we look back here, that said 4%, so the actual answer is 2%. So basically by reading that part of the Act, it's basically telling us that we can just do it without putting it in writing. So basically, as I said before, we'd be mad not to put it in writing, and I can only assume that they would say it doesn't need to be in writing because they would presume that 2% is not a large amount of money. But as I said to you guys, I think you're mad not to put everything in writing, even variations that don't cost any money. Like if someone even wanted, say, to change, like the paint color or even the door handles or something that was going to be the same amount of money, and it was a variation, I would still be putting it in writing for the fact that then if something comes up later on and they go, no, that's not what I wanted, and you can go, yeah, look at this email you sent me, and we carried out a variation, blah, 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 you've signed off on it. So even though it states here if it's less than 2%, you can basically carry it out. My advice would be put everything in writing. So definitely if you've got your hard copy there, guys, and you haven't already, I would definitely be highlighting that and basically putting a tab there. I've just called my tab variation 2%. So if you're wondering how we found that, if you hadn't found it because not everyone had typed in the box, as I said, I just basically went through my table of provisions and basically just read down until I found something about a variation, and it came on division 4. So the whole big heading was provisions applying after the contract is signed, and then basically a couple of lines down it said basically variation of plans or specifications by the building owner, and then also the next one was effect of a variation on the contract price. So yeah, it's just a matter of knowing which book to go to first and then basically reading through the table of contents and then finding it. But as I said, nearly all the ones that they ask you we've got them all highlighted and tabbed anyway. All right, so hopefully you're all good with question number 12. So I said if you wanted to actually reference it, just reference it as Contract Act page number 35, and that's basically where that came from, but definitely chuck a tab and highlight that section. And one other thing it does talk about, not so much in this, basically in our questions we're asking you, but it'll say down here, give me a second, that when we actually do a variation, basically we have to state the cost of the variation and the effect it will have on the contract price. So we actually have to, and we'd be mad not to, but when we put it in writing, we've actually got to say, okay, well, this is actually what it's going to cost, or it will be a reduction in this. So basically we have to actually state that to the owner as well. All right, so then we'll move on to the next question, which is basically question 13. And it says, explain 3 circumstances in which a builder can choose to use a cost plus rather than a fixed price contract. So straight away again, thinking to yourself, okay, which book is this going to be in? It's got to do, says here, contract. So it's got to be in our Contract Act or our contract regulations. So you'll find, just to give you a hint, you'll find a little bit in both. So, and also if you're not too sure what an actual cost plus contract is, with any of these books that we use, we want to come back to the beginning, you'll see here that on our table of provisions, there's always definitions. So if we go to page number, page number 2, and we scroll down, you'll see that if you're not too sure what a cost plus contract is, it'll actually give us definitions in here. So this is all alphabetical order. What's a builder? What's a building owner? What does a commission mean? What's a contract price? and then basically a cost plus. So it means a domestic building contract under which the amount the builder is to receive under the contract cannot be determined at the time the contract is made, even if prime cost and provisional sums are ignored. So it's basically saying, hey, I can't give you a fixed price on that because I can't tell you how much I'm going to receive at the time that the contract was done, because we might have to do some type of building work before we can actually give an accurate estimate. So I know insurance guys use it a lot, so because they've got to come and do some form of demolition, it might be for fire or it might be for termites, things like that, and they can't give an accurate estimation at the beginning, so they do a cost plus contract. So that's basically what a cost plus contract is there. So let's go back and have a look in our Act and our regs and see basically the three reasons or the three times circumstances that we can actually use one. So yeah, have a look through both of those books, and when you get it, by all means, yeah, type it into the box so I know you've done it, and then we'll go through and explain where it came from in case you had a bit of trouble, and then you can tab it and mark it. And just ignore what I'm doing for a second, guys. I'm just going to bring up the contract regs. Yep, that's right, Subit. So if you look at the, because you're in the regs, so now go back to the Act and you'll see that it, yeah, basically there's a part in there, without trying to tell you too much of the answer, restrictions on cost plus contracts. So go through your table of provisions at the front and you'll find there it talks about cost plus, and then it'll give you a page reference and you'll be able to find it from there. Alright guys, I'm actually having Super's type 1 of the box. I don't know if you guys need a little bit more time or whether you've got it and you've just handwritten it onto your book, but I'll take you through in case you're having a little bit of trouble in finding it. So we'll start, as I said, I just personally always start at the Contract Act, and so if I bring up the Contract Act, sorry I should come back to, I'll just make that a little bit smaller. Alright, so the beauty if you've got it in basically soft copy as well, guys, if you ever need to find it, you can basically go Control F, pardon me, Control F, and it pops down. You can then put in like a word that you're looking for. So if I go cost plus, it tells me there, section 13, restrictions on cost plus contracts. So obviously you can't do that in your interview, but if you work in soft copy, because I personally hate reading and scrolling through stuff, I'd much rather have a hard copy, but obviously online that's a little bit hard. So restrictions on cost plus, basically in this soft copy, it's different. Sorry to try and find it, but it's under the same part there. So section 13, and it's on page 14. So if I then click next, it should hopefully take me to where it is. So this tells us here, so restrictions on cost plus contracts. So a builder must not enter into a cost plus contract unless the contract is of a class allowed by the regulations. So you can tell us there it's already thrown us to the regulations, but then it says or. So we can also go to the regulations for some clarification, but the work to be carried out under the contract involves the renovation, restoration or refurbishment of an existing building, and it is not possible to calculate the cost of a substantial part of the work without carrying out some domestic building work. So that basically gives us a few reasons in there already, but then let's go over then to our contract regulations, and let's see what it pops up basically over there. So give me a second and I'll just bring this over, make that fractionally bigger. I don't know why that's all in colour for me. So basically if we come down here, so basically if we read through our table of provisions, as you would have seen in your hard copy, it's not a real big book. So the type of cost plus contract allowed. So that's basically regulation 11 or on page 6. So if I scroll down, so basically types of cost plus contract allowed. So contracts for work that is reasonably estimated will cost 500 grand or more, or domestic building contracts for public construction where the Crown or a public statutory authority is a party to the contract. So there's basically two reasons there out of the contract regs, which tells us, and then also when we looked at our contract Act, it spoke about these ones down here: renovation, restoration and refurbishment. So that's some other reasons in there. So by all means guys, I would definitely tab both parts of those of your book and yeah, basically highlight them and basically tag them as cost plus, because that I'm sure will be something that if not asked in your multiple choice, definitely in your interview, because it's something that I think a lot of guys do a lot of the time, just so you know, obviously covers the builder, because you know if we're doing it at a percentage. Sorry, can I repeat the page numbers? Yep, no worries at all, mate. So in your act, so in your contract act, it's on page number 14, and it's basically heading number 13 that says restrictions on cost plus contracts. So it should look, this one actually looks exactly the same as how it should look in your hard copy. And it also talks in there too that even though we do it cost plus, we've still got to, the builder must not enter into a cost plus contract that does not contain a fair and reasonable estimate. So we've still got to basically give an estimate even though we're doing a cost plus. And so then, yeah, if you wanted the page numbers for the regulations, it was page 6 and section 11. So yeah, definitely something I think you'll be asked somewhere along the lines, whether it be multiple choice or in your interview, basically when can you use cost plus. All right, so we'll just see how much more we've got to do on these ones and we'll have a little bit of a break. So we might do two more guys, because there's two more on contracts, and then we'll have a bit of a break. So if we look at question number 14, basically in terms of construction period delays, when can an owner terminate the contract? So what this is talking about, guys, is okay, if you don't know, we'll cover it in the next session or two. When we sign basically a contract, it's got to have a finish date to it. It can't just go forever. And basically, if for some reason we go over time, when then can the owner terminate the contract? So a lot of people seem to think, if you've been doing the multiple choice, probably the first time you do it, you think, well, hang on, if it says it's got to be finished by the 10th of January and it's not, well, I can terminate after the 10th of January. It actually outlines in our Contract Act basically the time frame, and then the owner can terminate with no issue. So let's have a look. I'll probably gave you a bit of the answer there, but in terms of construction periods, when can the owner terminate the contract? So straight away, guys, think which book is going to be Contract Act or Contract Regulations. And as I said, I normally go to the Contract Act just because there's a lot more in it. And so let's go to our Contract Act, and let's see if we can find something in there where it talks about basically the termination that's got to do with the actual time frame that the building project is in. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes, see if you can find it, and then I'll put it up on the screen and show you basically where that answer comes from. So if you go, as always, if you're new to this, go to your table of provisions. And sorry, I've just accidentally closed it, so I'll bring it back up. So come in here to our table of provisions. You can probably see there, and it's a matter of getting, a lot of people might be looking for termination, but obviously end of contract is where we want to go. So basically it says here it starts on page 39 and section 41, and hopefully when we read through that, if I haven't given you a bum steer, it should basically talk about the time frame. So maybe when you're done, guys, maybe even just type in the box done, so that yeah, I'm not sitting here waiting for you guys, and you guys aren't waiting there for me. Yep, okay, cool, a lot of them are done. Cool, excellent. So yeah, so let's have a look at it, guys. So hopefully end of contract, if we go to page 39, it's probably going to be on 42 or something in here. Close. So we come down here, and this will lead into our next question as well. So ending of a contract if completion time or cost blows out for unforeseeable reasons. So this one here, the contract has not been completed with 1.5 times the period it was to have been completed by. So that's basically saying a building owner may end a major domestic building contract if it's basically not done in 1.5 times. So just be wary sometimes too. We need to read on a little bit further. So it talks to you about basically section 1, which is this part here. For the purpose of subsection 1, any increased time or cost that arises as a result of a prime cost item or a provisional sum, or that is caused by a variation, is to be ignored. So basically, if for some reason, it's taken longer because they've actually, asked for a big massive deck on the back and so on, well, that's to be ignored. And the other part there will then lead into our next question. So you probably read it trying to find that one. So the question number 15 says, comment on the correctness of the following statement. So the owner can terminate the MDBC, so major domestic building contract, when the original cost of the contract price exceeds either 10, 15, 20 or 25%. So if you guys who have been doing multiple choice practicing for your test because you're waiting, yeah, I'll get to that one in a second. Sorry, is it Valavan? Is that how I pronounce it? Valavan or Valavan? Valavan? Yeah, Valavan. Yeah, cool, mate. I'll cover that, and we'll cover that in the next week. So I'll explain it shortly after this one here. And it's definitely not a dumb question, mate. It's one of the most common things people get wrong. So yeah, just back to this one here. So you would have seen that when we go back to our Contract Act, it says if the contract rises by 15% or more after the contract was entered into. So that's another reason that we can actually not we, the building owner may end the contract. So you probably found question number 15 whilst you were looking for 14. So the answer for that is 15%, which comes straight out of there. If you want to reference it, basically page 39, section 41. So the question that I had from Valavan was the difference between a prime cost and a provisional sum. Now, so this will be something we'll definitely go a lot more into next week when we actually fill out our contract. So basically, I'll just explain the whole process. What a prime cost and provisional sum items are there for, it's basically an allowance that when us as the builder, when we sign the contract, we might not know the cost of certain things. So to try and make that sort of in context, is someone's giving you a set of plans, hey Adam, can you quote on this? And I go, yep, no worries at all. At the stage of basically doing the quote, it might be, or it's probably likely that I don't know what door handles they want, what tiles they want, what type of bath or shower screen, what type of towel rails, what type of flick mixer they want, things like that. So because I actually don't know what they're going to cost, I need to make an allowance for that. So the difference between the prime cost and the provisional sum is the prime cost item is basically, or prime cost is just the item itself. So it's basically meaning that the labour component shouldn't change. So let's just say hypothetically towel rails. If we're putting in towel rails and they're not going to be wired in by an electrician, it's just a pretty simple, put the toggles on the wall or they've got the studs there, screw straight into it, we might make an allowance of say $100 for a double towel rail. And so then when they go and choose that towel rail, comes time we say, hey listen, we're basically at fixed stage, I need you to go and choose your towel rails. I've actually made an allowance for $100 per towel rail. So they go to Bunnings or Reese or wherever they go and basically choose the towel rail they want. If they come back and they've found a towel rail that's $150, then basically we're then covered to say, well, look, mate, I've only actually allowed $100 for your towel rail. You've chosen something that's $150. So therefore, those towel rails are going to cost you $50 more than what's been allowed for in the contract. So the difference between the prime cost item and the provisional sum is the provisional sum has labour attached to it. So the definition I use, or example I use for a provisional sum, is sink of tiling. So you might have allowed, I don't know, in their kitchen or their entryway or whatever it's going to be, basically a tile that's going to be a ceramic tile that's 300 by 300, and you show them the allowance and they then go to National Tiles and basically they choose a 600 by 600 porcelain. So in my experience, that porcelain is going to cost more to get laid than what the ceramic is. So therefore you're sort of covering your bum in the allowance to go, look, actually I know that you've chosen a different tile, but the labour component is actually different on this tile to that one. So that's the difference. The provisional sum has labour attached to it, and the prime cost item is just basically the item itself where the labour portion shouldn't change no matter on what they choose. So that's basically the two, but we'll definitely cover that Valavan in a lot more detail next session when we actually fill out a contract, and that's something that I'll show you how that's explained in the definitions of the major domestic building contract as well. All right, so hopefully that made sense. So what we'll do, guys, it's 7:30. I didn't bring my water in with me tonight when I'm presenting, and tell you what, I feel like I'm hoarse as, so I'm going to go and have a drink. I know some guys like to have a bite to eat and a cigarette. So let's come back in 15 minutes. So pretty much we're halfway through what we were going to do tonight. What are we up to question number, let me have a look. That was question 15, and there's only about 30 odd questions in here. So yeah, let's have a 15-minute break. Actually, I'm just having a look. 33 questions. So let's basically go have a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back and finish off the rest of the PowerPoint or the rest of the questions, and then we'll do some just some general answers that you guys might have. So I'll see you in 15.
No, that's just dangerous. Some
All right, guys, welcome back. Hopefully we're all refreshed, and we may as well keep moving along. So the next one I've got here, we'll do a little bit about basically away from our contracts now, and basically what is the purpose of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So just like our other books, let's basically pull out our OH&S Act so don't get it mixed up with the regs. And just like we've done on the others, let's basically go to the table of provisions. And I'll bring this one up on the screen shortly. So it tells us there basically on page 1 the purpose. So if we then go, or on page 1 in Roman numerals, actually what I might do in case the guys are watching this via recording and they don't have a book, I'll just bring it up. So bear with me a second. All right, so here you can see is the OH&S Act 2004, and basically when I say Roman numerals, it's obviously got an I, and basically page 1 is the purpose. So we scroll down to basically our purpose. It's taking a bit longer than I thought it was. All right, so I'll just minimize that a little bit, or minimize, shrink it. So basically the purpose of the Act is to create a legislative framework to give effect to the objects of this Act. So, and then if we scroll down, it tells us what the objects are: to secure the health and safety and welfare of employees and other persons at work, to eliminate the source and risk to health and safety, and basically so on. So you guys can read that, no reason for me to read all that for you. With these ones, guys, I don't bother tabbing and highlighting because they're very easy to find, because they're pretty much the first pages when we go in there. So that's basically going to give us the answer for question number 16, what is the purpose? So we found that. And then it says basically the next question, pardon me, so this is going to be onto a different book. So list 5 items that need to be included for a domestic building permit and in accordance with the building regulations. So with that application for the permit, what do we need to put in there? Now it says in there, it gives us a bit of a hint, so with the building regulations. So if it didn't actually tell you building regulations, when you're looking for your books, go, geez, which one do I go to? Or you'll automatically think, well, it's not contracts, so it's not going to be either of those. It's not OH&S, so it's not either of those. Therefore, it's got to be in my building act or my building regulations. So it basically tells us there that it's going to be in our building regulations. So if we then basically open up our building regulations, 1 second guys, and I'll just get my hard copy. What I might do is actually open it up on the screen so you guys can actually see it as well. Alright, so why don't you guys see if you can find it on your own, and I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then if you can't find it, basically what I'll do, I'll show you how we, or even if you can't, we'll go through how we found it anyway. So in our building regs, and I'll give you a couple of minutes and we'll see how you go. So just read through your basically your table of provisions, and hopefully as you scroll down through there, you'll see something that talks about building permits or applications. Maybe if you've got it, just type in the box done, so that I know you guys have found it. Yeah, well done guys. Thanks Subit. Yep, done Giuseppe. Thanks Ben. Alright, so just while the last couple of guys are finding it, I'll just put on my screen in case you were, thanks Paul, if you are looking, and make sure I'm sure you found it. But basically, so I'm on the table of provisions here. And when I've come down, you can see there it talks about building permits. Well done, Sasha. And it's got building permits, and then it's got applications. So it tells me here applications on this soft copy I've got for building permits is on page 24 and under section 301. So that's probably a good starting point. So I'm not too sure. Yeah, so on my book, I'm just looking at the hard copy now because I don't know how well these pages marry up, but in the hard copy, yeah, so on page 24, and then yeah, section 302, so application for permit to construct buildings. So basically what we need there, I'll give you a second to actually find that. So page 24, section 302. And it tells us that an application for a building permit to construct a building must be accompanied by 3 copies of drawings showing the plan at each floor level, elevations, sections, dimensions, the sizes and locations of structural members, and then basically point B, 3 copies of specifications, point C, 3 copies of allotment plans, and it even talks about the scale it's got to be. And then basically D, a statement of the use or intended use of all the buildings, and E, a copy of any computations or reports necessary to demonstrate that the building will, if constructed in accordance with any computations and reports, comply with the Act and the regulations. So I would basically tab and highlight that one, guys. So page 24, and I've just got a little of basically highlighted pretty much all of section 302 on the bottom of page 24, and then point E on the top of page 25, and I've just called that applications. That's how I've tabbed it and highlighted it in my book. And what it means to, guys, when I move on to the next part, if I'm going too fast and you've got your tabs and your highlighter there and I'm going too quick, just say, hey Adam, can you hold off a second? And basically I'll wait until you're ready to move on. All right, so back to the next question. So that was a little bit of an introduction into the building regs, guys. So what action should be taken regarding the protection of an adjoining property to applying for a building permit? So we're going to cover this one basically in a lot more depth in week 4, guys, when we talk about our permit process. But we'll talk about it now a little bit and basically give you a bit of an understanding, and we'll tab it. So straight away, that question, what action should be taken regarding the protection of an adjoining property prior to applying for a building permit? So straight away we should hopefully think, well, it's not going to be anything to do with contracts, so it's not in our Contract Act or regs. It's not really safety related, so it's not going to be in our OH&S regs or acts, so it's got to be in our Building Act or in our building regulations. So what we can do is basically go and have a look at our table of contents, and one second, I've got too many books here in front of me. So you'll see there that the question says protection of an adjoining property. So why don't you guys open up your Building Act, have a look in your table of provisions and see if you can find something there about the protection of adjoining property. And once you find that, basically let me know, and then we'll move on to the next part, and I'll bring it up on the screen so you guys can see it. All right, so if you have a look at my screen, if you haven't found it, so this is in the table of provisions, and so it's just a matter of getting used to looking through here to find the actual section, and part 7 says protection of adjoining property. So it's going to be in here somewhere, so the notice of the building work, so what notice we have to give, and then the adjoining owner, what they've got to do to respond to the notice that we've given them. So basically that's on page 68. And of this book, I think it's page 69 of the actual hard copy, but either way it'll be part 7, section 84. So I'm going to scroll to that, and you guys find it in hard copy, and then I'll bring it up on the screen and we'll have a little chat about it. All right, so I've got it here on my screen, and as I said, we'll go into this a lot more depth in a couple of weeks as well, but I'll read through it and then I'll explain basically how this is going to work. So an owner who is required by the building regulations to carry out protection work in respect of an adjoining property before or during the carrying out of building work for which a building permit is required must, before commencing the building work, serve the owner of the adjoining property and the relevant building surveyor notice of a proposed building work. So basically that's if we're building a retaining wall or something, you know, right next to the boundary, something where there's got to be protection for that neighbouring property, we need to basically let them know about it. So, and on that notice, it tells us here, when we give them the notice of what it is, that the prescribed details of the proposed building work as at the date of the notice, the prescribed details of the proposed protection work, setting out the nature, the location, the time and the duration of that protection work, and then any other prescribed information. So we need to basically tell them, this is what I'm going to be doing, this is the time frame I'm going to be doing it, and this is how I'm going to protect your property. So that's basically what we need to tell them. So if we come back to the question, so which question was it? This one down here. So what action should be taken to basically it's that part there. And then the next part too, which we're something that we want to be pretty sort of aware of is, and to be honest guys, I've got this highlighted as well. So I've actually got this highlighted in my book, all this section here. and I've got it hot and then tabbed as protection works. And then what I've got down here, this is probably the other part which a lot of guys aren't aware of, sorry, this part here, basically is that response from the owner. So the adjoining owner, not later than 14 days after service of the adjoining owner of the notice of the proposed building work, must give the owner a notice agreeing to the proposed protection work, or give the owner and the relevant building surveyor a notice disagreeing with the protection works. And basically, yeah, just talk to you about subsections 90 and 91 and so on. If they basically fail to give notice back on these on subsections 9 and 91 within the required time frame, then they've agreed to the proposed protection work. So what they're basically saying, if we've done all our part up here, they've got 14 days to actually basically respond and say, hey, no, Adam, I'm not happy with that. And basically, if they don't respond within that 14 days, they've agreed to the proposed protection work and you can just go on with it. So when we do our stuff on building permits, we'll talk a little bit about, not a little bit, a lot about dual certification and basically how that sort of trumps having to do this protection works notice. But that's a story for another day. So what we want to know and highlight is basically back to this question, what action should be taken? Well, we need to actually serve them notice and to basically say that, you know, we're doing this work and it could have basically effect on your property. I've got a question here, is it normal post accepted or must it be via registered post? If it was me, and we'll talk about this in some other, that was a question from Valavan, I think the best way that it's done is actually hand delivered, and it talks about how, you know, who you can leave this stuff, and we'll cover that in the coming sessions. But my opinion is it's a good way to actually basically, you know, we know how much of a nightmare the neighbours can actually make our life. So me personally, I'd be doing it, yeah, face to face, going, hey mate, my name's Adam, I'm building your property next door, just want to touch base that you know what we're doing, and basically, you know, we've got to do this little bit of demolition on the garage. It'll only take 1 day's work, and therefore, you know, basically give it to them that way. But it'll be something, you know, talk to your surveyor, because what it actually does, I'll bring this back up. I should have left it up there before, but when we spoke about basically what our forms were, does anyone actually know what form number these are, guys, if you've done the session before? I suppose if you've been basically practicing your tests at home, you might know what these forms are called. Yep, oh, you're all over it, Valavan. Well done, mate. Yep, so basically this is our Form 3 and our Form 4. So when I'm going to bring this back up, so that's got to do with our building permit. So basically when we're working with our surveyor, we've got an application for our building permit. We actually then get the building permit to say, yes, it can go ahead. And basically we've got our protection works notices and then the response. So this would be something, you know, said me, I would personally deliver it, but definitely work in conjunction with your surveyor, because he's basically, yeah, this is sort of his territory looking after these. So, but yeah, me personally, I'd be hand delivering it and making sure they received it. All right, so yeah, I said I don't basically highlight that part of your book, and I've just called it protection works, and definitely know the 14 days, because that'll be something that'll either pop up in your multiple choice and could definitely pop up again in your interview when you go in. All right, now I'm getting too many pages open that I can't actually find what I'm after. So give me a second. Here we go. All right, so the next one here, basically, yeah, a bit of an open-ended question, but it says, you know, what are the functions of a building surveyor? So it's actually got it written in one of our books. So same thing again, it's not going to be contracts, it's not going to be OH&S, it's either going to be our Building Act or our Building Regulations. So let's have a look at, if you go to your Building Act, and I'm sure that when we look in our table of contents, or table of provisions, sorry, there'll be a section in there which is relating to our building surveyor. So read through, and just as a bit of a tip, it's basically after sort of Division 4. So say if you're reading through all those first couple of pages, because there's a bit there, look after Division 4 in your provisions, in your table of provisions, and you'll see stuff in there that talks about basically building surveyors and then what their functions are. So once you've found it, maybe just type in the box what the page number is, and then I'll bring up on the screen basically how we found it and what the answer was.
Adam, can you hear me?
My headphones off for a sec, and I didn't actually quite hear if anyone was just talking to me. No, just might have been a bit of a murmur. Cool.
That was me, Adam.
Oh yeah, was you?
Can you
Yeah,
hear
cool.
me?
Yeah, mate, definitely go for it.
Sorry. Just to ask you about the delivering, that protection notice to the neighbor.
Yep.
And if we are doing hand deliver, and in case if they wanted to challenge us, say for example, we hand deliver it, and for some reason, middle of the work, they didn't like us, and they're challenging us, saying like, you haven't given it to us. So isn't it like a safe to do the postage, but posting it, and in two different ways, like as I said, like we can do the registered post and normal post.
Yep.
And normal post, we don't have any sort of any sort of mechanism to prove that we posted, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's another way too. You could definitely, that's probably a good way to cover your tracks as well. Is actually, put it in your registered post so they've signed for it, and then you could always follow up a day or so later if you wanted to talk to them verbally. So yeah, so it's one of those things. Whatever's going to work for you. And I always think that these are the sort of things that basically with your surveyor, because the protection of works notice might be something that we only do 1 out of every 10 projects, but obviously with the surveyor being that's something that he would encounter a lot more than us. I would just ask for his guidance on it, to be honest with you, because a lot of the times basically the building owner goes, yeah, okay mate, no worries at all, but as you said, it's that one client who's going to be we shouldn't say pain in the bum, because at the end of the day they're only protecting their asset, but yeah, we want to try and make it as smooth as we can. So yeah, that's probably a good way to honestly put in registered posts and then follow up. But yeah, I'd just talk to your surveyor too and see what he thinks, because he's done them probably a lot more times than we ever will.
Yeah, that probably looks like there's no regulation says whether we need to post it or talk or anything like that, but we can do any means, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as you said, by basically doing a registered post, and there's no way of them saying that they didn't get it. And I suppose if you were going, as if you did go and meet them face to face, they could basically also say, well, he never gave it to me, so it might be worthwhile, going over with your apprentice or something, just to, as a third party, to verify that you dropped it off. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
All right, cool, mate. No worries. All right, so I got in there. So section 76. So that. Give me a second. I'm a bit sidetracked now. I've lost my page, but I'll take Subert's word for it. So 1 second. I'm just gonna. Yes, at page 63. Yep, which is where we are. I'll come back to here, guys, to basically how Subert found that. So basically, we're looking in here in our table of provisions. Oh, am I in the right book? I've got that many open. Give me a second. The Building Act, that's the one. Scroll down. And there we go. Basically, private building surveyors, and then functions of a private building surveyor. So on basically page 62 or 63, I think, if it's in hard copy. I'll just bring it up on mine. There we go. So basically this is what their functions are, is to issue building permits, carry out inspections, and issuing of occupancy permits and temporary approvals. So there's a whole section there on private building surveyors, and we'll talk basically later on about what we do if we want to change our building surveyor and the courses of action we've got to go down to, because we can't just go, hey mate, you'll give me the shit, you won't sign off on it, I'll just go and get somebody else. So yeah, that's all outlined in there as well, what our basically all under our private building surveyors. All right, so the next one there is basically what is a, and I've just, if you wanted to highlight and tab that, guys, I've just called it basically builder surveyor functions, and you might be able to find that easily and think, oh, I know what they are anyway, but if you want to basically put it in, I think it's, I'm not one that likes to have heaps of tabs everywhere, but things that I find a little bit hard to find, and I always sort of tab it early on, and then once you find your way around the book, then basically just pull it out, because if you end up with too many tabs in your book, it's like confetti trying to find anything looking through the side of your book. All right, so the next one, basically, I'll bring it back up. What is a building notice? So what is a building notice / order? So same thing again, you'd think, okay, it's not going to be in OH&S, and it's not going to actually be in our Contract Act. So let's have a look at our Building Act or our building regulations. So when we come back to basically this one here, I'm going to go up a little bit more. Back to our table of provisions. It's just a matter of using this book till we can actually find, get used to finding the sections on it. Yeah, well done, Valavan, page 80. So when we come up here, building notice and building order. So it tells us this is on page 80 and section 106. So I'm just going to basically come down here. If you wonder why I'm putting in different numbers, it's just because it's a PDF and the, yeah, basically they don't actually line up that well. Oh, hang on, I did go the wrong way. Yeah, page 98 on here. Thanks, mate. I'm getting there slowly. Well, here we go. So there we go. Cancellation. So building notices and building orders. So that's where it basically talks about in there, you know, what is a building notice for a building order. And we would also, I'm pretty sure, find it under our definitions as well. So that's basically where it talks about what they are. And it just says basically your private building, or you basically, it doesn't matter if they're private or a government surveyor, they can cause a building notice to be served on an owner or of the building and the land on which the building work is being proposed or carried out for public entertainment and so on, and then basically the circumstances of which they can actually give you notice. So if the building work's being carried out on the land basically without a permit, and the use of the building contravenes the Act of the regulations, basically if it's unfit for occupation. And so basically there talks about when he can actually give you a building notice and serve notice on you. So there's the reasons there. So yeah, I've just got that tabbed in mind. You know, it might be something you get asked, not really high on the agenda of what they're looking for, but definitely it's I think worth tabbing in case someone says, you know, when can a surveyor, you might get in multiple choice, what are some of the reasons a surveyor can serve a building notice or building order. And basically, so I've just got that tabbed in my book with a highlighter with a tab that just says building notice. All right, so then basically if you receive a building notice, what action should you take basically for your compliance reasons? So as you can see, that's probably going to be in the same section. So if I bring this open up, because that whole section there was about building notices. So we're now looking basically for what we should be doing if we're actually served with one. So if we then scroll down, it's just a matter of knowing, okay, it's got to be in that section. Let's basically scroll down until we can actually, or read through your book, until we can actually you know, find what it is that we should be doing or what action we should be taking. So, and so yeah, it's a bit of an open-ended question, to be honest with you, but if you look down here, it's got you know, what's involved in the order, then it talks about representations by the owner. So basically this is sort of what we're getting at with that question. An owner may, in the manner specified in the notice, make representations to the relevant building surveyor about the matters contained in the notice. So we can actually go to them and obviously say, you know, sort of question it. And at the end of the day, you know, he's probably not going to backpedal, but say, well, actually, this is why I gave you the notice. This is the reason why. And then this is what I need you to do. And then from there, the relevant building surveyor may cancel a building notice if he or she considers it appropriate to do so after considering any representations under that made in section 9. So we can go represent ourselves and then obviously hopefully come to a resolution, and basically then they can basically withdraw that. So yeah, it's all basically in there. It talks about, you know, how they can stop our building work. Yeah, there's not too much we need to, you know, basically read through all that, because hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, you'd know now which part of the Building Act to go and find to see, you know, what that process is. But more than likely, the surveyor is going to, you know, if at the end of the day, he's doing your work. A lot of the people, I think, in the beginning see the surveyor as the enemy, but to be honest with you, all my dealings with them, not at all. They're doing their job and working along with us to obviously get the project completed, and obviously to the standard that is required. Because I'm sure we've all had times where you know, something might not have been compliant, and quite often they're just like, yeah, listen, Adam, just fix this and this, and when you're done, mate, just take a photo on your phone and send it over to me. So you know, it's I haven't really encountered any that have been like a real, you know, sort of pain in the bum and been trying to halt the progress of the construction job. All right, so question 22, So this is what I was talking about before. What method would you use to change the building surveyor after the project has commenced? So I might let you guys find that one there. So we did actually look in our, it's going to be in our Building Act again, and we found stuff in there on surveyors. So if you look in there, just to steer you in the right direction, I'm pretty sure it comes under maybe surveyor termination. But basically have a look, and when you find it, maybe just put the page number. And that's one I think that we want to basically tab and highlight because, yeah, it'll probably be in a multiple choice question. So, yeah, see if you can find that one. I'll give you a minute and type it in the box, and then I'll put it up on the screen. All right, guys, so what I'll do, I'll just show it up here. So hopefully we're in our Building Act. And, sorry, what question number 22. So this is if we're changing our building surveyor. So there we go. So termination of appointment, basically on page 61 or section 81. And here we go, termination of appointment. So basically it says subject to section 3, the appointment of a private building surveyor under this part cannot be terminated without the written consent of the commission. So basically you can't just basically go, no mate, I'm just employing you on a contract basis, see you later. Basically it can't actually be done without basically written consent of the commission. So that's one that I've got highlighted and tabbed, guys, and I've just called it surveyor termination. And so, yeah, if you want to highlight and tab it, hopefully that made sense to how I found that. So it's just a matter of using these books. And I know that some of the guys who have been online for a while, you guys started more at the technical side where we were doing sort of the computations. And this would have probably been your first introduction to these tonight. But as I said, by all means, we'll be using these for the next tonight and another basically 4 weeks after it. So if you think, geez, how do I find this and get used to it, guarantee you by the end of the 4 weeks, and then when you're doing your multiple choice that we give you access to, it'll become just second nature to you. All right. So then our next question 23. For what reasons could the Building Practitioners Board take disciplinary action against registered building practitioners? So this is actually on our PowerPoint, but I don't run the PowerPoint basically normally when we do this because it doesn't work very well on the webinar. But so rather than just pull it up to talk about these next 2 slides, basically these are also written in the back of your book. You've probably found you've got your answers in the back of each module. And so basically the reasons they can do it is after the investigation of a complaint by a client or other interested party against the registered building practitioner. So there might be a complaint and they come and obviously do an investigation and they can go, yep, okay, we can take disciplinary action against you. Obviously failure to comply with acts and regulations. So that could be to do with, not only like safety, but it might be doing stuff without a permit, stuff that's outside the permit. So anything that actually is against what our acts and regulations that we use, they can basically take action against us there. Carrying out defective building work and unprofessional conduct dealing with property owners, neighbours, suppliers and authorities. Because you probably noticed too when you guys, I don't know how much you've seen of your application, but that's why they also want to know your, if you've got any criminal records, and they want to do a police check on you because they only want people, I forget how they describe it, but basically practitioners of good character or something they call it. So yeah, they're all, they're pretty big on people and how they behave themselves within the industry. So one thing that a lot of guys don't know is basically I'll try and find something on here on the Act, and let me scroll down, it'll pop up. So here's something that tells us as far as our penalties go, and basically about, well, it sort of leads into the next question. So I'll show you the next question and then we'll talk about it. So it says, what sort of penalties could the Building Practitioners Board hand out should they take disciplinary action against a registered building practitioner? So you might see that abbreviated, guys, as RBP, so Registered Building Practitioner. So what can they actually do to us? So same thing again, this is one that's in your PowerPoint, but basically what they can do is obviously give you basically like just a bit of a reprimand. Say, hey, listen, Adam, you did this. Not good enough, mate, don't do it again, bit of a over the knuckles. Basically we can have fines, and they can also suspend or cancel our registration. So what I want to talk about with the fines, because a lot of people go, how much is the fines? And if you look at it here, it says 500 penalty units. So basically 1 unit equals $151.67. So 1 second, I'm going to grab my calculator because I've got one here somewhere. So that one there, 500 penalty units. So this might not be relative to us, but this might be a building surveyor one, but you'll see in there that quite often 500 is a pretty standard one. So if we go 500 times 151 point, what did I say, it was 57, I think. Let's find it again, 67 basically equals $75,835. So that's why you'll see with the penalties, like they don't always actually give you the maximum, but you can see there that it starts to add up. And that's why you look at those guys who demolished that Carlton pub, for the guys who are around Melbourne. And if you look, I remember reading in the Act after it happened, and basically doing demolition without a permit is basically 500 penalty points. So they've probably worked out with their solicitor, okay, well, this is what we can make, and we'll basically wear the fine. And I know that they've thrown the book at them with lots of other stuff they can find as well, but that's basically how they work out what the fines are. This is because this is legislation, this is the law, and it tells us that the penalty unit is basically this much, and then it's worked out on that $151.67. So as you can see, if it's a body corporate who basically does, and I know this is to do with building surveyors, but there's lots of stuff in there relevant to us as builders, and so obviously the penalty is a lot harsher on a body corporate. Basically times that 75,000 by 5, because it'd be 2,500 points, is a pretty big fine. So if you're wondering what those points mean, basically that's what it is: $151.67 for every penalty unit that they apply it to. All right, so what inspections should be taken on a brick veneer house built on bearers and joists? So this is one thing that we want to tab guys and highlight, and it's sort of funny, they've worded this one here for the brick veneer house slightly different to how it is in the legislation we're going to look at. So without me telling you the answers, think about it, it's not going to be OH&S, it's not going to be contract, so it's either got to be our Building Act or our building regulations. So I'll give you a couple of minutes and try and find out if you can just find the stage where it talks about, the section where it talks about the different stages of inspections. So maybe once you get it, just type in the box, whether it was the Act or the regs, and then basically the page number it came from. Well done, Giuseppe. Thanks, mate. So just a bit of a tip, guys, if you're looking through and you can't find it, it's actually in the regs, this one, it's not actually in the Act. So, just getting familiar with them. But the way that I try and remember is that the regs is probably a bit more, I suppose, how do I do something? A bit more practical element to it. Whereas, in my opinion, the Act is a bit more, well, this is the law. So that's the way that I would go to the regs first, going, okay, well, it's actually giving me advice on how to do something, rather than saying this is the law, and if you don't comply, then you get this many penalty points. Cool, no worries, Giuseppe. So is that your date, Giuseppe? 3rd of April? You've got one? Cool. All right, guys, what I'll do, if you're still working on it, that's fine, but you can probably still look in your book and I'll put it on the screen. So, as I said, we're going to be in the building regs. Hopefully, hopefully I'm in the right book because I've got that many tabs open. The building regulations. So if I scroll down here, I'm just going to get to the section that it's in. So you can see there, part 9, inspections, basically notices. Sorry, something in my throat. Inspections, notices, directions and orders. And that might be, it's worded a little bit different in here because this is basically an older reprint. So it's still 2006. But yeah, so on this one here, it's still part 9. But in my hard copy, it just says inspections, notices and orders. And basically mandatory notification stages for inspection. So on my hard copy, it's actually on page 116, but if you're using the soft copy, it's on a page 118. So let's have a look here. And I'll bring it up for page, beginning of section 9. There we go, I'll make that fractionally smaller. So mandatory notification stages for inspection. So yeah, I would definitely highlight and tab that one there, guys. So basically, let's read them out. So basically, when we need to get an inspection done is prior to placing a footing, prior to pouring an in situ reinforced concrete member nominated by the relevant building surveyor, then at the completion of our framework, and then basically our final, which is upon completion of all building work. And it says the relevant building surveyor may vary its stage set out in sub-regulation 1 in relation to the building work if it's inappropriate to the building work. So you can read on, and the mandatory notification stages for building work determined in accordance with regulation 1 and 2 must be set out in the building permit for the building work. So you'll see there with that question, it talks about it being on bearers and joists, and that actually doesn't actually say anything about bearers and joists, but it's going to be set out in our building permit. So he's going to say, okay, this is it's on bearers and joists, this is when I want to come. So, but basically, yeah, that's just highlight and tab that. And yeah, so and I've just called mine inspection stages, and I've pretty much just highlighted basically these parts here. All right, so here's another. This is a big one too, which a lot of guys who probably are working as DBLs when they first start the course, if you haven't done this unit, don't realise that they're doing stuff incorrectly. So at what stage of construction can a progress payment be claimed by the builder? So have a look at that, guys. Which book do you think it's going to come out of? So can a progress payment be claimed by the builder? So straight away, that's telling me that it's going to be something to do with the contracts. So let's have a look. As I said, I always go to the Contract Act, basically because that's where it's just a lot more contained in that than what is in the contract regulations. So let's go to our Contract Act, and let's see if you guys can find the actual page where it talks about progress payments and when it can actually be claimed. So yeah, I'll give you a minute. Maybe when you get it, type it in the box, and then I'll bring it up on the screen and show you basically where it is and what we want to understand about that. Cool, thanks, Balavan. All right, yeah, cool. Thanks, Subi. Thanks, Giuseppe. It's all come through at the same time. All right, so let's bring this up. So just make sure I'm in the right book. So this is going to be, so that's the Building Act, Contract Acts. So here we go. So if we come back to our, no, I haven't. So basically in our Contract Act, so it's going to come under our progress payment part. So on here it's Division 40 and basically page 37. So that's where it's going to kick off. I'll bring it up, and there's a lot in there. So I think this is worth covering probably a fair bit of this, and then I'll explain what the answer is, that it's what they're trying to get at. So All right, so with our progress payments, and we'll do this when we do our contract, just be aware that when we claim like a deposit and we claim a base stage and so on, it actually outlines in here what actually means base stage. So if you guys, you're not used to doing the claims and you think, well, shit, hang on, does base stage means that, or not base stage, but does lockup means the windows have got to be in, or is it just brickwork, or is the windows part of the frame stage? Basically, this here will actually give us a definitive answer or a definitive basically description of what those different stages are. And if you're ever unsure, you can either come back to here or you can actually, it'll be in your contract as well. So this talks about the stages. And then when we come down, this here, and we'll do this in the next week, talks about our progress payments and how we can actually claim them. So this first part is saying, okay, well, we're contracting to build a lockup stage. So we do 20% at base stage and 25% at frame stage. And then if we're building to the fixing stage, but most of the time we're probably going to be building all stages. So 10% base stage, 15% frame, 35 lockup and 25 fixing stage. And we'll talk about, you'll notice that only adds or doesn't equal 100%. And pardon me, that's because we've got to work out basically what our deposit's going to be. So we'll talk about that shortly. So this question that we just put in there, so at what stage can a progress payment be made by the builder? So what they're actually getting at is this part here. So a builder must not demand or receive any amount or installment that is not directly related to the progress of the building work being carried out under the contract. So basically when we've actually done this build, we're doing this build here, we can't actually claim stuff that we haven't done. So we're not saying that our limited license guys, like it's amazing how many guys I talk to who might be doing kitchen and bathroom licenses, or they might be both kitchen and bathroom one I get a bit, and even landscapers where they go, yeah, okay mate, look, here's the new kitchen, basically give me 60% on deposit and then the other 40% on completion. So that we can't do. We can only claim for basically the representing of the work that we've done. And we'll cover in the next week basically how we're able to change these progress payments, because we might find that there's a heap of money that's going to be in the excavation stage, and basically 10% of that contract isn't going to be excavation. That could be 30% of our contract price. And so how we can actually, why we're allowed to change that and how we do it. But just be aware, we can do that under certain circumstances, but we can't claim for work that we haven't done. And so like I've got a guy that I've trained previously who was a landscaper, and he was like, well, that's going to cost me 40 grand and it's nearly all in earthworks and materials, and so I can only get 5% of that, and then the rest of it as I progress. He said it's only going to be a week job and I'm going to have to get out of my pocket 30 grand. I said, well, mate, that's how basically it is in the regulations and in the act. So yeah, you can't claim for stuff that we haven't done. And especially if you're working, I don't know if any of you guys have ever worked where you've had to get basically approval from the bank, and the quantity surveyor might come out, and basically if you haven't finished that task but all your materials sitting there, he's not going to approve it. So if you're doing a deck, say you're building a big house and there's a deck on it and you're claiming a stage that's got the deck involved and you haven't fixed all the decking boards, he's not going to approve it until those decking boards are actually fixed. That happened onto a job of one of my mates. Same thing, the surveyor came out, they're basically a day behind, and the surveyor wouldn't approve the progress payment. And he said, look, mate, you can see all the boards are here. They'll be done by tomorrow. And the quantity surveyor said, look, sorry, mate, you could take those boards off and take them somewhere else. I'm not actually approving that payment into your account until that whole stage is completed. So, we can't claim for stuff that we haven't done. All right, and that's sometimes you'll see. I have noticed, I forget, one of the guys I train is basically with the volume builders, and I don't know if you guys have noticed it in Melbourne. You probably heard me talk about it before, but just a big shortage on brickies. And so I know a lot of one of this guy I trained, he was with Porter Davis, and basically they couldn't get brickies. So what they were doing was almost like a reverse build. So they'd put all the windows in, and then they'd start like the house would be weatherproof, but then they'd start building from the inside to basically keep those progress payments coming in. And I said to him, well, surely you can't claim lockup stage, because if we look at how Let me bring this open again. So if we look at here, so we've gone frame stage, and then they've gone lockup, and he's claimed the lockup stage. But when we read through lockup stage, it say that the bricks or the cladding, however it's described, has to be done. And so they were actually claiming that, but it wasn't finished. So whilst they were claiming this, they might have done, basically half of the fixing stage. And I said, well, you're not allowed to claim lockup because it's not done. And he said, yeah, I know, but it's the way they manage their cash flow. And now I've seen being adjusted basically in contracts where I saw one, I think it was Master Builders, and when it had 35% lockup, it had something like in brackets or the equivalent of 70% of the build. So that way there was basically covering the builder to say, look, I can't get a brickie, but I've done this fixing stage, and what I've done in the fixing stage equals to the percentage that I would be up to if I added my 5% deposit, my 10% base, my 15% frame, and then my 35% lockup. So I have actually seen that in contracts now where they're writing that in because if we get held up, as you can imagine, 35% is the biggest portion we're going to get, and just because there's no brickies, that could cripple our cash flow pretty significantly. If we're doing a $300,000 build, that's 105 grand that we can't claim because we can't get a brickie, but we've done lots of other work and then started on the inside. So yeah, so we shouldn't be claiming for stuff that hasn't been done unless your contract had something like that in it. All right, so wrong. Oh, sorry guys, I just basically cut off that question. So I'll just read it out and then I'll bring it up again. So the next question says, explain the concept of domestic builders insurance, what value it kicks in at, and what period of time it basically protects you for the owner. So here it is here. I'll bring this back up if I can get it back over. All right, so this one here has it explain the concept of the domestic builders insurance, what value it kicks in at, and what period of time it protects the owner for. So a lot of questions in one there, guys. The first part, so the domestic builders insurance, some people call it homeowners warranty insurance, is basically there to protect the owner, because the next part of the question we'll talk into shortly. Basically what happens is you guys have got to guarantee the building for a period of time, which we'll cover shortly because hopefully you guys will find it. So we've got to, as a builder, basically maintain that building. And so what happens is, let's say hypothetically I build a house tomorrow, I'll do the handover tomorrow, and then for some reason my company closes down, I die or I disappear, and then something goes wrong with that house. So that owner tries to ring me up and say, hey Adam, this footing's cracked, blah, 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 can you come and have a look at it? They can't get hold of me and they go, shit, I've got this $400,000 investment and Adam's done a runner. So basically that's why the domestic builders insurance is there. That's a concept of it. So that's a policy that you guys will take out once you become registered. So basically what does it kick in at? So basically it kicks in at $16,000. So it used to be $12,000. I think it changed in 2012 or maybe 2014, I can't remember. But anyway, the point of the story is now it's $16,000. So anything over $16,000 needs to have homeowners warranty insurance attached to it. So then basically the next part is basically what period of time does it protect the owner for. So what I'll do, this is all in the Building Act, so it's actually on page 104, so I'll bring it up on here and then you guys can highlight and tab it in your book. So give me a second. So if you're wondering how you would find this, you can see here it talks about insurance and then warranties for the purpose of homes under sections 137B. So yeah, so we'll basically have a look in that section. So if it's in a hard copy, guys, I'm pretty sure it's on page 104. So let me just pull it out on 104 on my hard copy and we'll have a look. Yep, so 104. So in the book, in the Building Act, it's basically about it's called the prescribed period, and that's what they're getting at when they're talking about our prescribed period. So give me a second, and I'll just bring it down to the right page, and then you guys can tab it and highlight it. I'm going to be getting close. All right. I think I've gone past it. Sorry guys, if you've got it in hard copy, basically if you look on your page 104 and it says prescribed period, and 1 second I'll bring it up on the PDF here, just want you guys to highlight and tab it. So it says in relation to a contract for the sale of a building on which the domestic work is being carried out, it's basically 6 years and 6 months and not exceeding 10 years. So this is going to have a little bit to do with a question that we'll talk about, is if someone does something with owner-builder, then obviously they're the owner-builder, so it's up to them to rectify it. But if they sell within that time, then they have to basically pay what I would call like a levy. So that's then who, because if I did something as owner-builder and then I move on in basically 3 years' time, basically the new owner, I might not have those skills to come back and basically fix it. So therefore, for owner builders, they then pay out what the remaining of that insurance policy would be over that time. There's like a sort of a levy calculator that they use, and that's also contained in there. So this is under 137B. I've gone too far, so I'll come back up a bit. 137E. Here we go. I'm getting there. Oh, I thought I was. This is why I hate doing it on the computer, guys. 37B. Should say prescribed period. I'll do the search thing. Anyway, you've all got it in your hard copy anyway, so Control F, prescribed period. Has anyone not found that in their hard copy? Unless this is an older version and it's not in there. Oh yeah, it's just written differently. Yep. There we go. Different page, 103. So that's what I'm looking at there. So basically 6 years, 6 months and not exceeding 10 years. And then basically talks a bit about down here, and then some more in here, basically if the building permit's not issued and so on. And that's what's talking about in relation to a contract sale for the building. Yeah, basically it's all in there, contained in there. So I said it's a bit of, with that question we were looking at before, there's a lot of them, it's about 5 questions in one. But basically anything that you want to know is sort of talking about it in there. So just remember the main part you want to basically get out of it is, it says, what is the homeowner's warranty insurance? Well, basically it's there if we become insolvent, and we'll find there's another question that talks about this coming up as well. So I've just got that basically highlighted in my book as the prescribed period. And some people I know put in there as the 10-year rule, because that's going to lead on to another question, which I'll cover when we get there. A lot of these sort of flow into each other. So bear with me, and we'll bring that one up shortly. So this one here, it says explain how you deal with a warranty claim at the end of the period if it was for cracks caused by shrinking timber. So basically what that one there is getting at, guys, is just purely about our standards and tolerances guide. So I don't have a soft copy, unfortunately, I can put on the screen, but basically when you read through there, it talks about, as I spoke to you before, about when there's cracks, yes, it has to be rectified, or no, just monitor it, and so on. So once the so once it comes to, when we're dealing with clients, that's our go-to, is basically look at our standards and tolerances guides. And sometimes, if it's something small, a lot of people just go and fix it, because for the goodwill of the customer, okay, it's just a lick of paint, I'll basically get it done. But if there's something that's going to be, fairly time-consuming and a lot of money, and we feel, hey, look, that's not basically, you'll get to that in a second, Valavan, that's a great point. So, sorry, I got thrown there with the question that came up. So that's basically up to you then. If you think, hey, look, this isn't basically, it's going to cost a lot of money, and basically it's within my rights not to have to fix it, that's basically our first point, is our standards and tolerances guide. So that's what Valavan has written here, and that's the first thing I noticed too, and I was hoping someone would pick up on it, how it talks about this is back to our insurance, and it'll come into basically this one here as well. For what period of time is the builder responsible for the completed project after the issue of the certificate of the occupancy or the certificate of final inspection? So you'll see there sometimes it says 6.5 years, and then sometimes it says 7 years. So, and the funny thing is, when you guys actually go and get your homeowner's warranty insurance, basically when you read your policy from QBE, it's going to say 6 years. And so this is the thing, it's all, to me, and I've spoken to Steve, our training manager, who's actually a surveyor, and it just doesn't seem to have basically the consistency there. So if you're asked this in an interview, that's why I like to tab it. And then if you are asked a question like that, you're probably just going to get in your multiple choice anyway. But then you can actually reference it and basically show you. So look, if you look on page 104, it says here 6 years and 6 months. So with Vallivan, did you see it written there somewhere as being 7 years? Because I'm pretty sure it's in there somewhere, or maybe it's in the contract that says 7 years. Now while he's typing that one, I'll sort of start talking about the next one. All right, so this one here, guys, what time of period is the builder responsible? Yes, that's on the same page. So let me have a look at it. Yeah, so what we'll do, I'll do that one there in a second and I'll show you. So it says, so what, for what period of time is the builder responsible for the completed project after the certificate of occupancy or a certificate of final inspection? So this is one of those ones too, guys, that, let me just find it. This is going to be in our Building Act as well. And give me a second and I'll find the page. So what if we turn on to page 93 of our Building Act, and you'll see there limitation on time when a building action may be brought. So I'll bring that up. This one here. So I've got this highlighted and tabbed in my book, and so it says, despite anything of the contrary in the Limitations Act of 1958 or any act or law, a building action cannot be brought more than 10 years after the date of issue of the occupancy permit in respect to the building work. So basically from when, that's telling us, guys, that we're liable for 10 years. So that's where there's a lot of confusion about time frames as far as you know, insurance and so on. So the insurance is basically going to cover the client, but that doesn't cover it for the full 10 years. So that's basically if for some reason we went insolvent, closed down, died, whatever, basically after 9 years, and then they came to us and said, hey, look, structurally something's happened here, Adam. Basically then the insurance says, look, sorry, that's a bit of bad luck on your behalf. We only cover basically this policy for the prescribed period, and therefore you're pretty much out on your own. So that's just telling us that if we're still trading though in 9 years time and something happens, we're then liable to basically go and fix that, because yeah, basically the limitation on when action will be brought against us as the builder is actually 10 years. So a lot of people think that it's just the same time frame as the homeowner's warranty, and so basically I've got that one tabbed in my book as being, I just call it the 10-year rule. So that's something that you definitely want to be aware of, because most people talk about the insurance. All right, so then basically as far and as far as the structural goes, so the structural is obviously the 10 years and the non-structural is 2. So I don't know if you want to write that in there, because it doesn't actually tell us anywhere in there. I think it might have been in an amendment or a practice note or something where it talks about the non-structural being 2 years. So I know a lot of guys who actually hand write that in there, and just once I've tabbed and highlighted that page 93, have actually then handwritten there 2 years non-structural. All right, and pretty much question 30, guys, is the same thing, just sort of asked in a different way. So what is the maximum period of time an owner can pursue the builder in relation to the building of a new home? So same again, 10 years. It all sort of ties in with that stuff there. So we can probably skip on past that one. Now this one here is just going to be a little bit of information for you guys. So it says here, distinguish between a simple contract and a formal contract. So basically, if we read through our answering guide at the back, a simple contract is basically saying to an electrician, you know, mate, can you come over and fix these downlights, blah, 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 and just send me the bill. So it's pretty much a simple thing that we've just had, you know, a verbal conversation on, whereas a formal contract is basically going to be something in writing, like our major domestic building contract or our minor works contract, and we'll cover those more in the next week. So like anything though, is that a simple contract is something then that's hard to basically enforce, because if there's a bit of a misunderstanding there. So, but that's basically the difference between the two. Now this one here, explain the concept of licensed lending by a registered building practitioner and the consequences that the builder may face if convicted. So same thing, and I'd maybe highlight this in your answer guide at the back. So basically what it is, it's when the registered builder takes no interest or involvement in the project which has been granted basically a permit using that builder's basically registration number and also the homeowner's warranty and so on. So I have read cases where a lot of people say to me, oh, hey, listen, Adam, what's the go? You know, my mate's got his license and I'm just going to be the foreman on it. Well, that's fine, because at the end of the day, that happens all the time. You know, look at Simmons Homes and Metricon. You know, Gary Simmons doesn't have any involvement basically in the job. So if you're big enough where you've got 5 homes on the go, but you've estimated it, you've quoted it, and you know, you're obviously issuing the progress payments and so on. It's going into your bank account. It's, you know, it's all done properly, but you've just got someone else managing it. Basically, that's fine. And if you've got you know, an agreement with that foreman that he's, you know, not on an hourly rate, he might be on a percentage of the turnover or percentage of the profit. Not an issue, because you're involved in that. So what has happened, basically where I've read where people have been sanctioned via the VBA, is basically someone you know, using someone else's basically license and number. They have nothing to do with it. They don't even sign the contract. So I'd say, hey, Subit, mate, you're registered. I'm not. I want to build this this house next door. Can I just use your license number and your homeowner's warranty just to get it through the permit process, but then I go and sign the contract and everything on it. So that's basically when, that's the ones that the VBA basically publish on their website when they find people doing it. So basically what they will do is they can obviously suspend or cancel the license of the person who's registered, and then you got, you know, fines and things like that on top of it. So just be aware though that the one thing a lot of people don't know when they license lend is that if something goes wrong, then they're the one who've actually been responsible for it. So if in 5 years' time something goes wrong and the contract's you know, under their name and there's a warranty claim or whatever, it's going to come back to basically what was on the permit. So yeah, I reckon if you're registered, you're mad to risk all of that just so your mate can build a house. All right, so pretty much the last question, that's pretty good time, it's nearly 9 o'clock, is this one here, and we're going to do this on our next session. So it says the importance of...
If I'm a, say for example, if I'm a license holder,
yep,
I'm partnering with the person who doesn't have a license and we are working together as a company, then the person is, I mean, part of the business, right?
Yep.
And isn't it, that case, isn't it mean to like he's get license lending there happening?
Sorry, so if user so you dropped in a little bit, but my understanding, I think what you said was that, so user in the same company, and
yep,
basically it's going under your name, but he's doing the work. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. I mean, if he's the partner of that company and
yep,
I'm the license holder, he doesn't have a license, then it's a license lending, isn't it?
No, well, I don't. Oh, I'd have to exactly see how it was set up. I don't give you a definite answer, then you go and do it. But from the way you've told me, if you're just basically part of a company and, you know, the profits go to your company and you're the license holder, mate, no issue at all, as long as you're, and you can actually have other people sign the contract as well, as long as they're like a delegate of your company, because as I said, if you look at the way a volume builder works, if you look at Metricon, basically the owner of Metricon actually doesn't sign all the contracts. So as long as obviously you're involved in, it's obviously under your license number, and basically it's under your homeowner's warranty insurance, and he's part of your company, and then he's obviously delegated that he can sign basically contracts on your behalf, then no, because it's all like you're still involved in that. I said that's how most of the volume builders work, and so
okay,
yeah, I said that's, yeah, I said without seeing, going into the total legalities of it. But yeah, Dave, if it's done in that scenario, then mate, there wouldn't be an issue with it.
All right. Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Cool, yeah, and that happens all the time where you see, fathers and sons where, the father is starting to step back, but at the end of the day, he's got the license number, and then that's probably one of the big portions of our clientele is the dad wants to retire,
Yeah.
and at that stage, he's signing the contracts, but pretty much the son is running it, but there's no issue with that because, that's under that homeowner's warranty insurance from the dad, and he's signed the contract, and it's all under him. His license is on the permits and so on, so yeah, it's not a big issue.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Yeah.
All right, cool. So this one here, guys, this is what we're going to do next session. So if you haven't filled out a contract, I will email it over next week. And so you can actually either type it in because it is, I'm pretty sure there's one we can type in. And what I'll do for those guys, because one thing that feedback I gave to our training manager was that I thought this was geared too much, this subject, to someone who was going to be a DBU or a DBM. And so I've actually made up a scenario for someone who's going to be a limited license. So if you're doing a kitchen and bathroom renovation, or you're doing carpentry or landscaping, I've actually got a contract that you can do which is going to be relevant to your field of work, because I don't see the point. It's a good learning phase, but at the end of the day, if you're not going for a DBU license, why would you want to practice filling out a DBU contract? So I'll basically next week, if you guys come back, because I know that Campbellfield was called off at short notice tonight, I'll be running, we'll still do this subject, but I'll have 2 contracts you can work on. So if you want to do the minor works one, and we'll talk about that in more depth next week. But basically that's pretty much what I had for you. If it's your first time on the webinar, basically I hope you enjoyed it. And I know I felt a bit clunky from my end, guys. Sorry with all these different books. It's just because I actually can't buy a PDF version of it. I can only download them free from the net, and for some reason the ones that are free through the legislation, as you probably noticed, weren't exactly the same, and I probably had to fumble a little bit through these different books to try and find it. So hopefully we basically got through, but once we start working out of our standards, definitely they're identical to what you guys have got. So apologies on that part, and hopefully it didn't actually come across too disjointed trying to find the different sections when they were labelled differently in the table of contents. So what I'll do, guys, I'm going to hang around for a while. I know I always get lots of questions afterwards. So by all means, any questions, hang around and I'll answer them. But I'll stop the recording there. And by all means, hang around, either type me or answer me your questions. And hopefully I see you next week.